Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine wielding the power of darkness. Now, the question looms, how will he use it? Let's see together. And don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed this explanation, be sure to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and show your support. We'll catch you in the next chapter. It's a big day at the Academy of Extraordinary Abilities. A young man is distracted on his cell phone, playing a game and asking when they will surrender. In the game, he's extraordinary. This is Ning Fun, who continues his frantic gaming, saying that with such an advantage, it's impossible for him to lose. However, someone raises their hand and lands a hit right on his face. From the ground, he sees that it's Wang Yue. Angry, she asks him what he thinks he's doing since the awakening exam is about to start. And isn't he going to prepare a little instead of playing games? He, smiling, asks if work and play aren't a great combination. Besides, he's already 18 at most. He'll awaken a common 2-star class. Ning Fun approaches Wang Yue and tries to take advantage, saying that she awakened a 5-star class at 16, so why should he try so hard? She could just carry him. She immediately grabs him by the neck and angrily shouts that there's no way she'll do that. The protagonist gets scared because she's about to start her lectures. Around them, the candidates for the exam watch, saying that she's the goddess Wang Yue, and she stood out in the last special training. More candidates gather, admiring her, as she awakened a 5-star class at 16, and the county has been waiting for a genius like her for a long time, but they are puzzled, wanting to know who that guy next to her is. One of the candidates replies that it's Ning Fan, known throughout the school as trash, and that he's about to turn 18 and still hasn't awakened. Wang Yue starts pulling him by the ear, dragging him to the exam entrance. The candidates, still watching, get angry that someone like her is hanging out with that idiot. This world is called Blue Star, a world where the game has merged with reality. As soon as you turn 16, everyone has the chance to awaken extraordinary abilities and become adventurers. This was the National Adventurer Awakening Exam of 2025, held at number 7 high school in the city. One of the supervisors calls the attention of the second-year students, saying that he will explain the rules of the exam. After explaining the rules, he shouts that the next awakened one could be one of them. Disappointed with Wang Yue's actions, Fun wonders why she needs to make such a fuss. As this is his 3rd time taking the old exam, he's no longer a rookie. In one of the exam sections, the teacher Chi Wei explains that the called student should please go to the test area for the awakening and that the students who successfully awaken can pick up a set of basic equipment for their class and prepare for the practical test. In line, the candidates start chatting about which class they want, but Fun remains bored until the teacher calls the next 3rd-year student, Ning Fun. He steps forward, and all the candidates present start laughing at him. He greets the teacher, and she, smiling, tells him not to worry and to stay calm in the test area. She asks Fun to place his hands on the crystal and relax his mind. He does, but nothing happens, leaving him worried that he might fail again. However, something catches his attention. The crystal begins to react, surprising everyone present. Chi Wei, looking at that reaction, thinks that if the stone reacted, it will definitely be a class awakening, and that blue light represents magic classes. She explains to Fun that upon awakening, they automatically learn initial skills and that next, they will see how many stars the class will awaken. Fun is surprised as the system informs him that he has awakened 1 star, and that his learned skill is magic slime. This makes Chi Wei feel sorry for him since he only awakened 1 star. The candidates burst into laughter, telling him to leave quickly as he's embarrassing himself and that trash is trash, so he couldn't be anything more than that. The teacher asks Fun what skill he has awakened, but he remains silent. This prompts the teacher to call him again, and he turns around, unsure of what to say. She imagines he was hit by something big, given how long he's been silent. Looking at him, she still feels sorry for him, as he's still just a 1 star. The teacher hands him the equipment and instructs him to change and proceed directly to the next phase. Seriously? He wonders if he heard correctly. Fun starts thinking about the system notifications. At the moment he awakened, the system had detected that the host had completed the awakening and met the conditions for system activation. This left him even more intrigued about the system, especially since more notifications had arrived at that time, stating that the system was successfully activated and that the host had acquired it. The system further explained that the passive abilities, such as Dark Origin and Mysterious Gift, the passive ability, Dark Origin, ensures that he does not suffer the backlash of Dark Force when using curses, with exemption from costs when using prohibitions, and with the passive ability, mysterious gift. He can unleash forbidden spells once a week without any consumption, but these details were only visible to the protagonist. This leaves him intrigued, wondering if the dark force is not the most malevolent in that world. Then why mysterious gift? What could it have to do with him? As he's pondering this, another system notification appears, informing him that the magic slime ability has been detected and that the transformation would begin, making him worried about this transformation thing. Once again, the system notifies him that the transformation has been completed, and the magic slime ability has become Profane Earth Shield, leaving Fun confused. Fun becomes concerned, as this talk of darkening and also forbidden curse seemed quite ominous, especially with the practical test approaching. At the portal to the practical test, the teacher explains that 50 people will form a group and face the monsters in the Fani Sanctuary, familiarizing themselves with the abilities they've just awakened. However, under no circumstances will the candidates be allowed to form teams with each other. They will not be permitted to attack one another, and drones will supervise the process. She asks everyone to check their abilities as quickly as possible and assures them that no one will be able to see. Fun observes on his system that the ability is active and that the Profane Earth Shield cursed magic can invoke the dark force from another world to form a barrier, capable of crushing any enemy that approaches. He becomes thoughtful about the cursed magic, because those words sounded quite dangerous, and if it's some kind of malevolent magic, he'll be in trouble if someone finds out. While thinking about this, everyone starts entering the portal, but, intrigued by the information he had received about his abilities, he keeps asking the system for more explanations, which, in turn, provides him with nothing. Heading straight to the portal, already in the test area, everyone was already frantically battling, quite excited. Fun watches from a distance, noticing that more and more goblins are arriving. However, he remembers that the entire field is under drone surveillance, so he can't use that curse recklessly. But he also remembers that he doesn't have other means of attack, so he'll only be able to hide and wait for the opportunity. One of the drones starts hovering right above Fun. In the test supervision room, Captain Joe, seeing those images, gets angry, saying, while others are killing monsters and leveling up, "What the hell is that guy doing?" Shi Wei, trying to be lenient about the situation, says that the young man awakened a bit late and that, moreover, his health is not very good, and his only activated ability is a defensive magic, so it's not suitable for individual combat. Hearing this makes the captain even more irritated, asking them to call Fun out, as there's no need for him to continue in the exam since, anyway, he's just a one-star class and won't be a true adventurer. One of the people in charge of supervising the images coming from the drones interrupts him, asking him to take a look at something quickly. Joe turns around, asking, "What's going on?" Sweating profusely, the guy with glasses says he wasn't sure what had happened. It seemed that one of the drones had been attacked by something, and the transmission had been cut off. To make matters worse, he points, "Grade," leaving Fun completely astonished, to the radar, saying that the monitoring alert detected a power fluctuation far above the average in the sanctuary. Immediately, Captain Joe shouts, ordering someone to check what was going on. At the location where the drone was shot down, a young man was trembling all over, saying, "How can there be such strong monsters in the training field?" In front of him was a huge goblin resembling Wolverine. The goblin wastes no time and shouts for his companions to rise and no longer allow themselves to be enslaved, commanding them to obey his orders. He shouts even louder, "All those invaders should be buried here," driving his allies into a frenzy. While he was shouting, one of the drones approached, but the goblin immediately noticed and attacked, destroying it. The debris begins to fall into the forest, and one piece lands right on Fun's head, making him wonder, why on earth would a drone fall on his head? But he soon notices something and is surprised to see the vanguard goblin and the other goblins surrounding him with a sinister look. The vanguard goblin laughs, saying, "It seems there was an insect hiding here." Without wasting any time, the goblin leader orders the attack. Fun watches, wondering why so many monsters are gathering there, and judging by the size of the middle goblin, he's probably the leader. However, recalling that some drones were taken down, his expression changes, and he says, "This would be a great chance to test if that curse is really real." Immediately feeling confident, he raises his hand, and an incredible energy begins to emanate from his body, scaring the monsters and worrying the goblin leader as well. With a sinister energy, he shouts his ability, Profane Earth Shield, causing several terrifying creatures to rise from the ground. Back in the supervisor's room, The guy with glasses informs Captain Joe that all transmissions have been lost, and that suddenly, there was a leak of dark force in the sanctuary. It's suspected that a magic beast of king level or higher has appeared. Immediately, Captain Joe orders reinforcements to be called and for all nearby civilians to be evacuated. This horrifies teacher Chi-Wei as well, as she wonders how a magic beast of king level or higher, with the power to destroy an entire city, could appear on the day of the exam. Back at the battle with the protagonist, the goblin leader is terrified by what he's witnessing, as the protagonist is consumed by that ability. A strange dark power envelopes him, making his creatures tear through the goblins. Fun begins to look at his hands, thinking, so, cursed magic works that way? At this moment, the goblins continue to be slaughtered by the creatures the protagonist conjured, and several system messages appear, notifying him that by killing the goblin soldiers, he gains several experience points. A dark energy begins to approach the goblin leader, leaving him frightened. As he says, the power of the dark force is simply incredible. How did that human obtain it? As that enormous power approaches, he tries to run, but he feels his movements becoming extremely slow, but it's too late. The power reaches him, and screaming, he begs, "No, stay away from me." The energy engulfs him completely, making the system notify that the vanguard goblin has been obliterated, granting 6,000 experience points to the protagonist. Fun's status window appears, notifying that he is a mage class, and due to the experience gained in battle, he went from level 1 to level 10. Currently, he has 0 health, 8 strength, 8 agility, 20 spirit, and 12 resistance. This makes him happy, as he leveled up easily and in the practical exams of previous years. At best, they could only level up 1 or 2 levels, but then, he becomes intrigued, thinking that the experience from common monsters is quite low, especially depending on that elite monster. Still deep in thought, he wonders, how could an elite monster have appeared in the exam field? As he contemplates all this, various items begin to fall from the sky. Surprised, he realizes that it's the loot dropped by the elite monster, and even more impressively, all that equipment is of orange grade, leaving Fun completely astonished. Quality. Looking at the item Vanguard badge, he finds it strange because he's never seen an item that increases attributes. The item in question is consumable, has orange quality, and permanently increases the agility attribute by 10. Another item, the Shadow Claw of the Slayer, is also of orange quality, but requires level 20 to use. It grants an additional plus 13 strength, plus 16 agility, plus 10% attack speed, plus 5% critical rate, and 10% chance to activate combo, and it can be used 3 times. Fun is thrilled with the items, even though he can't use the claw yet, but he thinks he could get good money by selling them. Confident, he believes that now he can easily face higher level monsters and finally start to prosper. Just as he's thinking this, the supervisors announce that all students must immediately abandon the test and use the teleport scrolls to exit, which makes him worry about what's happening. Looking around more carefully, he notices something. Fun turns in all directions, realizing that everything around him has been devastated, and he thinks that all those craters are the work of the dark force, which is terrifying. Once again, the supervisors make an announcement, and immediately, he uses the teleport scroll, saying that it's better to get out of there quickly, to avoid being discovered. One by one, the candidates start to return, and finally, Fun as well. The supervisor immediately instructs them to leave the area and go home. Frustrated, Fun keeps thinking about magic beasts of king level or higher. Even if everyone there joined forces, they wouldn't be able to resist. Still worried, he wonders if the reinforcements arrived in time. However, he changes his reaction, because unbelievably, the source of dark energy disappeared. But this makes him suspicious, wondering, is it possible that the monster escaped from the sanctuary? She continues listening to orders over the communicator, saying that this situation has gone beyond what they can handle, and that no one should cause alarm. They must avoid large-scale disturbances and initiate the school's magic seal, leaving only one exit so that unrelated people can leave quickly. Fun approaches, calling for the teacher. She, sweating nervously due to the situation, asks the protagonist, "Are you okay?" Unconcerned with what's happening, he says, "I'm fine," but she shouts for him to return immediately, because the school is temporarily closed, and he should not come back unless necessary. Away from the school, Fun and Wang Yua are talking. Wang Yua tells the protagonist that the teacher had a very strange expression, as if they were facing a mortal enemy. She mentions that rumors say a source of unknown energy was detected inside the school, and that the entire school has been isolated. This makes Fun wonder if it's possible that the unknown energy source has something to do with that elite monster. Disappointed, he thinks, just as I awakened, the school got shut down? Wang Yue becomes worried about him. Thinking that the event had a big impact on him, she tries to cheer him up, saying that defensive magic can guarantee his survival, but that they aren't suitable for individual training. Starting tomorrow, she says, he'll join them as part of a team, trying to appear strong. He declines, sighs, and thanks her, saying she shouldn't worry, as he can train on his own. With a foolish expression, he imagines himself resolute with his power, but at the same time, he knows he can't expose himself, because if they discover the forbidden dark magic, it'll be a problem. Wang Yue, serious, points her finger at him and says, I won't accept your refusal. Tomorrow morning, at 8 o'clock, we'll be waiting for you at the West Gate. With that, she leaves, leaving the protagonist talking to himself in shock. Fun thinks, that woman, she acts like she's my wife, behaving that way? Sweating nervously, he wonders what he'll do now, and if it would be a good idea to come up with some excuse, but he decides it's better not to, as dealing with her personality is relatively difficult. As he thinks about this, an idea comes to mind, but he's not sure if it will work. Fun decides to head to the Yuancheng trading house. Looking at the huge building, he takes a deep breath, thinking, this is the best place to sell valuable items. Thinks that some weapons come with built-in abilities. He could buy equipment with the Dark Slime ability and pass himself off as a mage. Fun enters the store, hoping the system won't turn the built-in abilities of the equipment into curses. Besides, he can sell the drops from the monsters he killed. The sales clerk approaches him, asking, how can I help you? He replies that he would like to buy equipment with the Dark Slime ability, whether it's a weapon, clothing, or item. She asks the protagonist if he is a newly awakened student and explains that actually, low-level spells like Dark Slime aren't worth buying specifically. However, they do have high-level equipment there, more suitable for training, and she could show him some options. He simply says, it's unnecessary, I need something temporary, so the equipment's grade doesn't need to be very high. She thinks it's all a waste of time and asks the new trainee to come help him. She leaves, stressed, saying that, after all this fuss, it seems he's just a poor guy, so I won't even bother. Let the newbie handle it. The protagonist is left confused. The new trainee arrives with a smile and asks, do you need anything? The protagonist explains what he needs. She leads him to the items and starts testing them, starting with an iron arm, which gets him excited, then a heavy hammer, which he can't even lift off the ground. Fun tries on a ring and decides to go with it. The trainee asks if he's satisfied with the ring. He laughs and says, it's great, thanking her for accompanying him all the way. Fun also takes the opportunity to ask if it's possible to sell items he got from monster drops. She replies that yes, it is, and she'll take him to the responsible department. She leads him to the identification room. Master Wang asks them to come in. The trainee informs him that the young man wants to sell battle items. The protagonist takes out the claws and asks for help in appraising the item and its value. Wang takes the claws and is astonished, as it's an orange quality weapon, focused on agility and doesn't require a high level, making it suitable for novice players. Additionally, it comes with 3 gem slots, allowing for attribute adjustments as needed, creating a more personalized effect. Wang, intrigued, says, it's a good item, and I believe several clients in my guild would be interested in it. He asks if Fun has any specific price expectations. The protagonist, pleased, simply says, the higher, the better. The analyst asks Fun to sit down, saying he'll make some calls to potential buyers, and asks Miss Yang to take care of him. She responds that he can rest assured. Wang, speaking with someone named Mr. Zhang, asks, were you looking for a good item for Jinlang? I have one available here. Fun sits down, and Miss Yang serves him tea. The analyst returns, informing the protagonist that the equipment has been sold, and that the buyer is willing to pay 50,000 crystals. After deducting the 8% transaction fee, he would get 46,000 crystals. This leaves Fun and Yang speechless, as it's a large amount. They stand up, still in shock at the information. Wang says, we can finalize the procedures right here, and once everything is set, the crystal transfer will be quick. The protagonist asks for it to be done quickly and requests to see some more equipment while the final preparations are being made. In another section, the attendants are talking. A black-haired one asks the girl who dismissed the protagonist, "Do you not like handsome men? Why did you leave him aside?" She, being snobbish, says, "I like handsome men with money and power, and that guy didn't even deserve to be in the same place as me." Some time passes, and from afar, the attendants notice the protagonist returning. One asks, "Is he the client you didn't want to attend to?" The one with her hair tied up says, "I heard that the young man sold a piece of equipment for 50,000 crystals. The black-haired one is shocked, saying, "That amount is equivalent to 3 months of my salary?" Hearing all this leaves her stunned. She starts to regret it, wondering, why wasn't I the one to help him? Outside, Miss Yang tells Fun that when he returns he should just ask for her next time. With a smile on her face, she introduces herself, saying, "My name is Yang Xin." The next day, Feng, cheerful and whistling, walks to the meeting place set by Wang Yue, thinking that the night before, he tried out the spells embedded in the equipment, and apparently, they aren't affected by the system. This reassures him, as no one will notice. The protagonist arrives at the location and spots Wang Yue immediately, greeting her. However, other people greet her as well. They are the members of her guild, the mage, the shield warrior, the berserker warrior, and the cleric. She introduces them to Fun, but the mage and shield warrior give him dirty looks. Intrigued by those looks, he wonders, "Do I owe them money?" Jiao Cheng approaches Yue, asking if she's about to undergo a second transformation. Hearing this surprises Fun, as he realizes that every 30 levels, you can undergo a transcendence. He wonders if Wang Yue is about to reach level 60, as she really is a genius. Xiao Cheng takes out a potion, saying, "It's a gift. This item is an advanced agility potion, which permanently increases agility by 3, surprising his friends, since the item is valuable." Xiao Cheng says, "The price isn't an issue, just a few tens of thousands of crystals, and I don't mind." The crucial point is that this type of advanced potion is hard to obtain, and his father asked several friends and spent a good amount of money to get one. Wang Yue immediately thanks him for the gesture and asks him to take the gift back. He finds this strange and asks, "Aren't you determined to enter the best university?" She turns away, saying, "I don't need it, we have other matters to attend to." Leaving him talking to himself, he points a finger at the protagonist, asking, "Do you really want to waste time with that kind of trash?" Immediately, she turns with a sinister look, telling him, "Be careful with your words." He smiles and asks, "What will happen if a nobody isn't trash?" After all, bored, Feng wonders, "Why does this guy keep attacking me? Does he have some kind of problem?" The cleric tries to defuse the situation, suggesting they leave, but Xiao Cheng shouts for them to leave him alone, saying, "That guy barely has enough money to buy a bottle of attribute potion." Fun mocks Xiao Cheng, saying, "It's just a potion that adds 3 more attributes. Stop showing off." This enrages Xiao Cheng, and he asks, "How dare you speak to me like that?" The shield warrior intervenes, saying, "Xiao Cheng, you're speaking too loudly. Do you, by any chance, have something more powerful?" Cheng starts to smile, proposing a bet. If the protagonist proves he has such an item, Xiao Cheng will immediately kneel. However, if he can't prove it, Xiao Cheng will kneel and bang his head on the ground. At that moment, Feng takes out his item, telling Xiao Cheng to get ready, and asks Wang Yue to take it, as it was her gift. Surprised, she asks, "Is this the Pioneer's emblem? An item with an appearance that permanently increases attributes." She's never seen anything like it, leaving everyone there astonished, wondering, how could there be an item that permanently increases attributes by more than 10? They suspect it must be a fraud. Confident, Fun simply says, "Whether it's a fraud or not, try it out and find out." Looking at the item, she hesitates, unsure whether to take it or not, but the protagonist reassures her, telling her, "Don't worry, I found the item at my house. It was destined to be yours." He shouts for her to use it quickly, since everyone there is eager to see. She uses the item, and an energy begins to envelop her arm, leaving everyone surprised. Pleased, she says, "My attributes have indeed increased," astonishing the cleric. Meanwhile, the shield warrior and Xiao Cheng can't believe it. Cheng suggests that the protagonist probably stole it. Smiling, Fun says, "You'd better keep your promise." Immediately, Xiao Cheng refuses, but Wang Yue asks, "Aren't you a man? Are you going to back out?" He looks around, hoping for someone to help him, but everyone is giving him dirty looks. Nervously, he begins to kneel, ending up on his knees before the protagonist. Fun, satisfied with this, tells Wang, it's time to leave, and says goodbye to everyone, saying, we'll see each other around. She tries to apologize, but Fun interrupts her, asking her to stop because their relationship doesn't allow for that kind of thing. Smiling, he says that she really doesn't need to accompany him. He would prefer that she achieve the second transformation first and get into the best university because, with her by his side, he can't train efficiently. Concerned about Fun, she asks him not to get discouraged and hands him a book, saying, it's for you. Not quite understanding what it is, he asks, is this a skill book? She replies that it is and that when he reaches the appropriate level, he should learn those skills. Fun asks if all of them are purple quality and, judging by the look of them, if they're all expensive. She responds that they don't come close to the value of the item he gave her. He smiles and closes the book, saying, I'll accept it. Now, in the dungeon, Sinister Cemetery, zombies are emerging from their graves and attacking, but soon, 2 attacks are launched in their direction, hitting each one squarely in the head, scattering their remains everywhere. It was Wang Yue with her bow, making the protagonist happy because she had succeeded once again, but soon, he feels sad, thinking that the experience there is very low. However, he can't tell Wang Yue that he's already at level 10. At that moment, she notices her communicator ringing. She answers, and her friend informs her that she just received a message, saying that the great boss, Fallen Necromancer, is about to appear. She also says that it's a rare opportunity and asks if Wang Yue is going. Xiao Cheng notices that the cleric is talking to Wang Yue and insists that she must go, because how else would they defeat the boss? He also adds that the Fallen Necromancer might drop rare items for mages, which is very important to him. She tries to downplay it so that Wang Yue doesn't hear those absurdities. Wang Yue thinks for a moment and looks at Fun, who tells her, go ahead, everything's fine. After all, we're all in the same dungeon, and you can continue training later. She takes a deep breath and says, okay then, but asks Fun to proceed to the safe area and wait for her. He smiles and agrees quickly. She heads toward her group. Fun, with a sinister look, says that he's finally alone and that the possibility of that great boss appearing seems to indicate that it's his lucky day. Confident, he affirms that fortunately, he had already prepared for that day and learned 2 new skills. In any case, they can all be used once for free, so it's better to have as many curses as possible. The system notifies him that his passive ability, Mysterious Gift, will allow him to release forbidden spells once a week without any consumption. Feng begins to stretch, saying that with his current level, he only has 3 skill slots and that the skill books Yue gave him can only be used after level 15. In another part of the Sinister Cemetery, there are several monsters everywhere, and a guild observes from a distance. The tank warrior informs them that the great boss is appearing in the deep tower of the dungeon, and they need to kill everything along the way to get there. He asks them to be very careful, as the difficulty of that dungeon is high, and the monsters inside are very dangerous. As he says this, a huge flame passes right in front of them, leaving them frightened. The guild girl urges them to move quickly, because an adventurer team is already ahead of them. The tank warrior is outraged, asking, how's that possible? Surprised, the mage says that it's Wang Yue and Xiao Cheng from the Sovereign Lion Guild. Even at the national level, they are considered new talents, truly deserving of their reputation on the battlefield. They continue destroying everything. Xiao Cheng yells that the boss is definitely his and asks, do those fools think they can compete with me? Wang Yue, with her bow, keeps obliterating multiple targets at the same time, leaving her guildmates amazed. The cleric asks the berserker if he noticed that Yue had gotten stronger, and he replies that he definitely did, especially since her agility had increased by 10 points. Meanwhile, at the tower of the Sinister Cemetery, a portal begins to form. It's Fun, laughing, saying that it seems that this ability isn't just a high-level magic prohibition space but also a teleportation ability. The ability, Void Path, Cursed Magic, tears through space to enter the world of darkness, moving quickly to the target location, and lasts for an hour. At that moment, a dark aura begins to form, and the boss of that dungeon, the Fallen Necromancer, emerges with a sinister black aura. Fun jokes, saying, the Necromancer is late. At the same time, the Necromancer fires a powerful attack at the protagonist, causing a massive explosion. The dust begins to settle, leaving only the mark of the impact. The Fallen Necromancer, enraged, yells at the protagonist, how dare an adventurer without fear, how dare you appear alone? As he says this, Fun appears from the portal, right behind the necromancer, using the void path ability. With a piercing gaze, he says, "I don't want to share the loot with others." Immediately, he uses his other ability, Celestial Firestorm, cursed magic, which summons a violent rain of fire from the sky, dealing damage over a wide area. Immediately, a rain of black meteors begins to fall on the fallen necromancer, causing a massive explosion. The dust begins to settle, and Fun emerges from it, satisfied, because the system notified him that he had killed several monsters at once, including the fallen necromancer. The victory earned him 50,000 experience points, taking him straight to level 30, which makes him happy, because now he can undergo his first transformation. He starts walking to pick up the dropped items, imagining that the loot is truly generous and that he can use the gem and the jewels. Although the skill books Yua gave him aren't exclusive to mages, they are still worth good money. The dropped items are Darkstone, a material type, which grants 20% more magic damage and 20% more life drain. Necromancer Pendant, which grants plus 15 strength, plus 20 spirit, plus 100 mental resistance, plus 100 curse resistance, and immunity to toxins, and can be used 3 times. And finally, and most importantly, the Necromancer's Insignia, a consumable item that reduces 3 permanent life points but gives plus 15 spirit permanently. Fun immediately chooses to use the Necromancer's Insignia, thinking it's acceptable, even if it reduces his life. The system notifies him that a special item, the Necromancer's Micro Recorder, has been detected. During the transition, it could unlock the hidden profession, Necromancer Sorcerer, or activate the prerequisite mission for the hidden profession, God of Universal Magic. This makes him happy, imagining that hidden professions are quite rare and are usually innate, not something that can be prepared for in advance. However, he finds these micro recorders strange, wondering if they are the key to activating hidden professions. He starts shouting, "I will become a god of universal magic," but accidentally uses his celestial firestorm ability again, causing several black meteors to fall. Even in the area where Wang Yue's guild was, the meteors rained down across the entire battlefield, leaving everyone there worried, wondering what the hell was happening and where that power was coming from. Immediately, they are told to stop advancing and to retreat. Xiao Cheng is outraged, because he wanted to kill the boss, but Yua shouts, "Do you want everyone here to die?" In such a dangerous situation, he starts sweating, thinking, this is all a mess. She takes out her phone to notify Fun and sends him a message, telling him to leave, because they have other things to deal with first. However, Fun had already left and was arriving at the Jintai Transformation Hall. Once inside, he notices that there aren't many people there. He turns around and realizes there is someone in the room. A woman greets him and asks if he came to take on the transformation mission. He replies that he did. She asks him to wait a moment, as she needs to register some information first, and begins asking for the protagonist's personal details. As she registers his information, she thinks to herself that he only managed to become a mage at 18, his qualifications are a bit lacking. She gets up and directs the protagonist, indicating that the mage transformation sector is just over there. In the transformation sector, she explains that he can follow the process instructions and informs him that she'll be leaving. If he needs anything, he should call her. He thanks her. As she returns to her desk, she notices someone waiting for her. It's Captain Joe. Looking worried, she asks if something happened, and he explains that they just investigated the area and that the sinister cemetery had suffered severe damage. The energy source is still unclear, but they estimate that the threat level might be higher than king level. Intrigued by the situation, she asks if there have been 2 king level threats in just 2 days. Joe responds that yes, and that's why the higher leadership sent him there. Looking at her, he asks her to call in the Lone Shadow to take immediate action. In the transformation room, the system notifies Fun that there are 2 options to choose from. 1. Necromancer First Transformation Mission Objective, obtain the mission item Blood King's Robe by entering the Phantasmal Realm Labyrinth of No Illusions. Deadline, 3 days. Difficulty, Class A. 2. God of Universal Magic First Transformation Mission, Prerequisite, Objective, obtain the mission item Sacred Emblem by entering the Phantasmal Realm Temple of the Resplendent Sun. Deadline, 3 days. Difficulty, Class S. Fun, intrigued, asks why there are 2 options and also notices that God of Universal Magic is just a preliminary mission. Even so, he decides to accept it, receiving a system notification saying that the successful completion of the transformation mission is verifying the corresponding information again. After choosing his mission, he decides to leave. As Fun descends the stairs, he reflects that it really is a hidden class. Even Class S missions are available. And luckily, the deadline is 3 days. Fun says goodbye to the girl, but finds it strange, because she wasn't the same woman who attended to him a short while ago. Back at the tower of the sinister cemetery, someone is analyzing all that dark energy, while a man is surprised, saying that it's the first time he's seen someone from the Lone Shadow and that even their attire is different. Captain Joe asks him to keep quiet, because the existence of that organization is secret. He begins to explain that the members of the Lone Shadow have a military hidden class that allows them to use dark power to fight, especially designated for special missions. This person is Jing, the same one who led the protagonist to choose the transformation mission. But she starts to feel something strange, saying that the dark power is powerful even though it has dissipated significantly. It still affects her. Jing explains to the two that they didn't find any clues. In fact, it seems the person responsible disappears after causing damage, making it impossible to deduce their objectives. Concerned about the situation, Captain Joe says that there have been frequent reports of anomalies in some secret areas recently, which could be a sign of some crisis. He asks if there could be any connection with this issue. She responds that it's hard to say, but she would consult the superiors and request reinforcements. Joe asks if the county is concerned, considering they were going to send the famous lone hurricane from the Lone Shadow. The guy with glasses approaches and asks if she can confirm whether the cause of the damage is a monster and if there's a possibility it could be a. Jing interrupts him, wanting to know if he was suggesting that the cause of the damage could be someone like her, a mutant. Quickly, he apologizes, saying that wasn't what he meant. She explains that the hostility levels there have already surpassed the king level. Trying to control such a massive dark power is something the human body simply couldn't withstand. Worried, he lowers his head and asks if there's an abnormally powerful monster hiding in Changlai, capable of causing a catastrophe at any moment. Jing responds affirmatively, saying it seems to be hiding in the shadows, and they need to find it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, at Fun's house, he's in his room, saying that the darkness is strangely comforting. He sits down, imagining that he's reached level 30 and gained 4 more skill slots, and that he will start by learning the 2 books Wang Yue gave him. A system message arrives, notifying him that the possible fusion detection of the skill's arcane shield with the curse impure shell was automatically executed, and that the passive skill guardian of impurity has been learned. He places his hand on the system panel to view the learned skill information, and the system informs him that the passive skill guardian of impurity automatically activates when attacked, absorbing 100% of the damage emitted by the impure shell, with a limit equivalent to the damage caused by the impure shell. The impure shell will gradually regenerate after the attack ends. Fun is pleased to know that curses can fuse with low-level spells to create new effects, giving him another form of defense. Normal damage is ineffective against him. He begins to wonder what the other book does. The system informs him that there's a detection of the skill Falling Meteor, with a possible fusion with the curse impure shell and celestial fire rain, automatically executed. The passive skill master of the elements, Earth, has been learned, increasing the effects of all Earth spells by 20%. Looking at his skills in the system, he imagines that he still has 4 skill slots, so he decides to buy more books at the Yuancheng trade market. Day breaks. The protagonist decides to head to the trade market. He enters and passes by a receptionist, who notices him, thinking he's the same guy from before. She stops and greets him, but he says he's looking for Miss Young Shin. She starts to flirt, saying that Shin is busy with another client and that today she would be the one to assist him. Fun says it's not necessary, as he'll look around by himself. This makes her furious, asking if the protagonist isn't a man, and how he dares to refuse her offer. She runs after him, saying not to worry, that it's part of her job. At that moment, someone comes running, calling out the protagonist's name. It was Shin. Fun asks if she had finished her work. Tired and out of breath, she explains that she wasn't busy, just eating something, and that a colleague informed her that he was there, so she came running. Fun apologizes for interrupting her meal and says he'll invite her to dinner later as compensation. Embarrassed, she says how could she accept such an offer. The other receptionist just watches the conversation, furious at being sidelined. In Wan's office, he places the 2 books on the table, saying that he'd like to request that they sell them to him, and he'd also like to buy some mage skills. He says there's no problem at all and asks Miss Shin to accompany him. Wang is intrigued by the protagonist because last time he took an orange weapon, and this time, they're purple skill books. He starts to take an interest in his background, thinking it would be best to send someone to investigate. Night falls, they are dining, having a great time. Fun raises his hand and shouts for the bill, but she says she already paid, leaving him embarrassed, asking if they hadn't agreed that the protagonist would pay. She smiles and says no, and that she has a reason for inviting him, so there's no need to worry. They stand up, and he, not understanding anything, asks what the reason could be. She laughs and says it's a secret. Fun says he owes her a dinner. Shin tells him not to worry about it, and that they'll talk later, as she needs to head somewhere else and will take a taxi. He responds that it's fine and wishes her a safe trip. Inside the car, the taxi driver asks where she's going, and she replies that it's to Municipal H Hospital number 2. She begins to imagine her father in the hospital and thanks the protagonist, as she earned a good commission. Smiling, she imagines that she'll finally be able to pay for her father's medical expenses that month, which makes her really happy. However, at that moment, something happens. The taxi driver crashes into something, and a claw pierces him, spraying blood everywhere, leaving Shin horrified by the scene. At that instant, a portal appears in the sky, and several monsters begin to pass through it. Immediately, she opens the car door and jumps out, falling hard to the ground, not realizing there was a monster on top of the car. Surprised by the event, she asks what is happening and why monsters appeared in the safe zone. But soon, she notices there's a monster right behind her. From the portal, someone else emerges, emanating an incredible energy and giving a sinister smile. An explosion occurs, making the monster furious. It was Shin, disappointed with her attack, as that monster was clearly stronger, and she was just a level 1 mage with a 1-star attribute. Without wasting time, the monster charges at her, ready to kill her, but Joe arrives at the last minute and decapitates the monster's head. He asks how she is and tells her that if she can move, she should find a place to hide. She replies that she's fine and will immediately look for a safe place. Joe observes the surroundings and asks if everything there is corrupted, explaining that the secret realm has begun to merge with reality, and he had never seen such severe decay before. Looking at the monster's head, he imagines that these creatures aren't something a common person with only 1 star can face, remembering what the guy with glasses said about there being an incredibly powerful creature hidden in that domain that could bring destruction at any moment. He starts to consider that this might be possible. However, he notices a huge hand coming toward him and dodges at the last minute. Joe finds the attack strange, wondering if it was a mutant. Then, a sinister figure introduces himself, saying that he's not that kind of trash, but rather a guardian of darkness called the Spring Observer. Hearing this intrigues him, as he's never heard of the Spring Observer, but he figures it's best to leave that aside for now, since there are more pressing matters. Immediately, he charges at the Observer, striking with his sword, but the Observer counters with a powerful punch, sending Captain Joe flying. He starts to think this is really bad, as he realizes that the Observer has at least the power of the 3rd level. The Observer places his finger on the ground, and dark energy begins to overflow, declaring that this is his territory. With a sinister expression, he says that someone as weak as Joe would never be worthy of being his opponent, and he approaches Joe, landing a full-force blow, causing blood to splatter everywhere. With the impact, Joe is thrown far away. The Observer, laughing, shouts that he has indeed become stronger and that stepping on this land feels like a continuous flow of power emerging. However, he hears a voice coming from his amulet, saying that he is an insignificant human and should not get caught up in his own vanity. Quickly, he apologizes. A dimensional rift appears above him, emitting a voice that says weakness is his power, and that if it were present, he would be nothing more than crawling trash on the ground, just like all his companions. Hearing this paralyzes him, leaving him in shock. Something begins to emerge from the dimensional rift, gradually taking shape, until a sinister entity emerges from it, making the Observer kneel, trembling, as he hears the entity say that he must prove that he still has some value. She orders him to use the people of that city as sacrifices for her dominion in that world. Trembling, he says he understands. At that moment, someone pulls back a curtain. It was Fun, who is surprised to witness something in front of him. He looks around and sees that a battle took place there, notices a monster in front of him, and imagines that he only went to the bathroom, and all of this happened. The monster turns, noticing the protagonist's presence, and leaps toward him. Some cracks begin to appear in the ground. Fun uses his new magic, Stone Thorn Walls, which hits the monster squarely. He explains that fortunately, he paid a lot of money for that weapon. With an additional purple skill, allowing him to take advantage of his type of magic. He opens the door, noticing that the observer was carrying Captain Joe and that the entire scene was corrupted. With a sinister look, the observer drops Joe to the ground, bleeding, telling him to wait. As there's still a little worm that escaped, the observer jumps and goes all out toward the protagonist, who wonders what that thing is. He grabs him but notices something strange. Looking at Fun, he realizes that the protagonist is enveloped in dark magic and finds it very strange. How did he manage to block his attack? The entity that possessed him begins to be fascinated by that powerful black shadow power, and looking at the protagonist, it notices that his power is far beyond the ordinary and feels drawn to him because his aura is more terrifying than death itself. Fun imagines that this guy seems strong and wonders if, by chance, he would use some forbidden curse in the city. He opens his eyes, releasing the energy he was concentrating, completely shattering the shell that enveloped the observer's arm. Immediately, the entity releases its mental control over the observer, causing him to scream for it to return. However, the entity simply says that the user he's calling is out of service and that he should handle it himself. The entity starts to return to the portal. Several creatures awaited it at the portal as they were closing the doors, until finally, they close. The observer says that his strength and power are fading away. Fun notices this with a sinister look and begins to imagine that the mutants are those who, during the awakening process, acquired the hidden shadow class. They are capable of using the power of darkness, possessing much greater strength than normal classes of the same level. However, at the same time, once they lose the protection of the power of darkness, they go insane. Seeing that the observer was about to start losing his mind, Fun uses his Stone Thorn ability, finishing him off completely, and comments that they are really difficult to deal with. Tired, he takes a deep breath, imagining that luckily, he was able to focus entirely on his attack without worrying about defense. Worried, he thinks he needs to pick up the items that fell on the ground first, before anyone notices, and then get back home as quickly as possible. In another part of the city, Jing and an assistant are walking through the chaotic scene. The assistant says that the monsters have retreated and that the field distortion has also disappeared. Jing becomes thoughtful, as two destruction spells, distortions invading reality, always appearing suddenly and disappearing in the same way. What could the enemies be planning? Jing asks her assistant about the other locations. She replies that overall, they are safe, except for the squad to the south of the city, which suffered heavy casualties, and that their situation is still unknown. Jing remembers that the area to the south of the city is under Captain Joe's responsibility and decides to go there to check it out on site. Duan is observing the body of the observer that the protagonist killed. Intrigued by it, he imagines that the observer lost everything he was carrying. Jing arrives at the scene, shouting for everyone to stay still, and asks who they are. Duan shows his identification, telling them not to worry, as he is a member of the Illusion Beyond the Clouds. She asks if Illusion Beyond the Clouds is that unofficial organization composed entirely of fighters. He responds that's exactly right. Jing mentions that she heard they usually operate in secret, so why would they be there? He turns around, saying it's because of him, pointing to the body trapped by the stone thorns, explaining that the body used to be his companion. However, he betrayed the organization and helped invade reality through the distortion, directing monsters to attack the camp. Except for a few, everyone was killed. Jing, intrigued, asks if the invasion stopped because of his death. Duan points to his former partner and asks if they killed him, but she replies that no, and worse, they don't know who did. Explains that the entity likes to hide in the distortion because it's very cunning. He has searched for it many times, but it always escapes. Jing informs him that Captain Joe has the power equivalent to 3 transformations, and even so, he was completely defeated. Both, intrigued by the situation, start to consider that there might be someone that powerful in such Chung. When Jing sees Duan leaving, she asks where he's going. He replies that he's going to look for something at Feng's house. He's very happy because the things the observer left behind include 2 sets of orange armor from the fighter class. The first item is the Yang Wei Eternal Radiance chestplate, which requires level 120 to use. The second is the Yang Wei Eternal Radiance pants, which also require level 120 to use. Fun wonders that he didn't see the observer using these items, so probably, he didn't have the necessary level, because if he did, the protagonist could only have defeated him using forbidden techniques. He picks up the pendant left behind and finds it strange because it has no specified quality, and the information is marked as unknown. Intrigued, he starts fiddling with the pendant. wondering if some ancient god is hidden inside. However, through the pendant, someone was watching him from elsewhere. It was the distortion entity, saying that luckily, it reacted quickly and closed the distortion in time, hoping it wasn't discovered. The entity watches Fun looking at the pendant, worried if someone is inside, which scares it. It screams to cut all connections to avoid revealing its location, leaving everyone there in fear. The entity begins to sweat coldly, saying it almost had a heart attack, and wonders how the protagonist managed to detect it. The next day, at the city hospital, Captain Joe explains to Jing that it was that young fighter who saved them. He begins to recall what happened, saying that as soon as the enemy saw him, it immediately opened a rift in the distortion and fled. Jing comments that she can vaguely feel that his ability isn't below hers. The guy with glasses finds it strange because, even with that guy being so strong, he couldn't capture him. She says apparently, that's true. Intrigued, she thinks that maybe he's just passing through, maybe hiding. In any case, the great mystery is certainly recorded beyond the conventional magic marks from last night, and they didn't find anything special on the battlefield. Joe says that if the great mystery was living there, he would feel much safer just imagining it. The guy with glasses says he has a somewhat exaggerated idea to share. Jing, thoughtful, asks what it might be. He asks if in last night's battle there were traces of the power of darkness. She responds that yes, because some ancient distortion monsters were present. He begins to speculate, saying it's a crazy idea, and asks, what if by chance, the great mystery is also a mutant? Because both destruction spells cause casualties on both sides. Before he can finish his explanation, Joe interrupts him, saying that's impossible and that he's overthinking it. Jing is left pondering all of this, considering if it could be possible. At that moment, the protagonist arrives to complete his mission, introducing himself and asking if it would be possible to do the class change mission there. Fung enters the place to carry out his mission, and looking around, starts questioning if that place is really the Temple of Solar Radiance. However, someone is watching him from afar. It was Duan. But earlier, at the trade market, Duan had gone there, being introduced by the receptionists. Wong greets him, saying he heard that he was interested in buying a 4 transformations fighter armor set, and asks if that's correct. The woman merely imagines that this guy is very handsome and has the level, so if she could stay by his side, she wouldn't have to worry about the future. Wong, smiling, says that coincidentally, they have an old client who just called, preparing to sell a 4-star fighter armor set. However, he only has 2 pieces at the moment, a chest plate and pants. Duan becomes serious and asks where that person is. Wong explains that unfortunately, this person won't be able to come in right now. Duan begins to think that all this equipment and information corresponds to what he's been looking for. Although it hasn't been confirmed yet, it's highly likely to be the master's legacy. He asks Wong if he could tell him where this old client is and says he would pay for that information. Wong doesn't know what to respond, worried about the situation he's in, and starts to imagine that it's a huge coincidence since the protagonist just said he's preparing to sell the set, and now this gentleman shows up asking for information as if they're in cahoots. Wong explains that he remembers the protagonist saying he was going to the neighboring city to resolve some things but that he'll call to confirm. Wong returns and realizes that Duan had left and asks the receptionist if he really left. She responds that yes, she even escorted him to the door. Seeing Wong's concern, she asks if something is wrong. He replies that earlier he did some research on the protagonist's background. His parents were from a common 2-star class but disappeared in an accident when he was young. Since then, he's been alone, studying at City School 7, and only awakened at 18, still being of a common 1-star class. Hearing that explanation surprises her, as she thought he was more impressive, but it seems like he's just an ordinary guy. Wong explains that he always found him suspicious, with a poor appearance, and now he's going to be exposed. She asks where he got the items he was selling in the shop, imagining that a 1-star class wouldn't be able to get such good things. Wong says that's the problem. Although he's friends with the daughter of the wine group, the group didn't help him much. Thoughtful, she begins to remember Duan, who had a serious expression, and asks if Fun could have stolen that set. Sweating coldly, Wong says it probably wasn't stolen, but very likely wasn't obtained legitimately either. However, this time, it seems he's bothered the wrong person. She begins to imagine Duan beating up the protagonist, as a 4-star level person is high level even in Baishan province. Returning to the present, Duan continues observing the protagonist. Looking at him, he's impressed that someone so young was able to repel a distortion invasion. After all, Even masters like his were defeated by distortion bosses. But according to the information, the master's set might be in the protagonist's hands, and if it's not him, it must be someone behind him. Either way, it's better to be cautious. Finally, Fung arrives at the Temple of Solar Radiance, observing everything that's happening there. Duan, watching the protagonist use power, imagines that he's starting to change his clothes, and depending on the clothes, he might get a rough idea of his power. Fung finishes changing his clothes. Duan becomes indignant, thinking that it was just ordinary clothes, looking more like those of a newly graduated student, and wonders if it could be a disguise. He imagines that, considering the protagonist's age, the novice disguise wouldn't attract much attention, as it would be easy to blend into the crowd. If the protagonist is trying to hide, he might escape, but to avoid alerting him, Duan decides not to follow too closely. As a precaution, he decides to mark him with a mental tracking ability, which allows him to mark the target in his consciousness without being detected. Looking at Fung, Duan decides to use his usual appearance, observing the surroundings and seeing where the protagonist was going. Duan thinks that the monsters there aren't that strong and wonders what Fun is doing there. Upon entering the castle, something catches Fun's attention. A monster was about to attack him, and without wasting time, it launches an energy blast toward the protagonist. However, due to his passive ability, Fung defends himself automatically, without taking his hand out of his pocket, leaving Duan surprised by that. Indignant, Duan wonders what ability that is and if by chance it's an absolute defense that can't be broken at all. He notices that the monsters were avoiding Fung as he walked normally and wonders if that guy is even normal. Fung stops in front of a huge statue, leaving Duan intrigued, wondering if he will face the boss alone. However, the protagonist finds it all too much, as no one is around. The statue begins to sweat nervously in front of Fun. Duan, indignant, wonders why the statue wasn't moving. The protagonist decides to walk around it. Thinking that the statue wasn't the mission guide, he stops in front of a large hall, saying that was probably the place. However, the mission boss appears, flying in front of the protagonist. Fun watches him, but the six-winged seraphim uses one of his abilities to observe Fun and immediately flies away. Fun watches the boss fly off, wondering what had happened. Duan, in shock, wonders if that could be the hidden boss and how he knew. At that moment, the system notifies that the mission almighty magic of the first class change was to enter the Temple of Solar Light, obtain the mission item Sacred Emblem, and defeat the temple's hidden boss, the six-winged seraphim. Fun reflects on the system's notification but quickly changes his expression, saying that being an S-level mission, who could handle that during their first class change? However, the hidden boss, flying away in fear of the protagonist, says that the situation is terrible because he's in his own domain and still has to flee. The atmosphere is tense, with lightning and thunder all across the sky. The boss continues to flee at full speed from Fun, but without wasting time, Fun raises his hand, using his lightning strike ability, summoning a sinister giant eye in the sky and calling forth a gigantic lightning storm, unleashing a celestial calamity. The lightning strikes down toward the six-winged seraphim, obliterating him instantly before he even has time to react. Due to the immense destructive power of the attack, not only was the boss eliminated, but a large part of the temple was destroyed as well. Duan can't believe what he just witnessed, observing the surroundings. He says he's never seen such a destructive spell before and that the strength of this guy is definitely beyond that of his master. He wonders if Fung could be one of the 8 legendary transformed ones. Amidst the dust, Fun is frustrated, thinking that until he completes his first transformation, he won't be able to level up, as he's losing a lot of experience. Looking at his hand, he says that at least he got the emblem and can return to complete the mission. The item in his hand is the Sacred Emblem, a consumable of legendary quality, granting a permanent increase of 8 spirit attribute points and a permanent 100% bonus to recovery effects. Fun grabs his scroll to teleport back, but Duan comes running toward him, asking him to wait a moment. Fung turns around, feeling concerned, wondering if the guy had seen something. Duan immediately stops, frightened, wondering why the protagonist looks so serious. Fearing what Fung might do, he asks him not to get angry, as he will explain everything. However, at that exact moment, they hear an alarm, both becoming concerned about what it could be. Fun raises his arm, asking them to leave first, saying they can talk more outside. Duan agrees with him. Once outside, the protagonist asks if Duan had been following him the whole time. Duan apologizes, saying he had no other intentions and only wanted to confirm something, adding that Feng seems very young, as he doesn't fully trust his vision. Duan begins to explain that although his master was strong, he sacrificed his own life to temporarily seal the distortion. But unfortunately, the traitor escaped. Over the years, the traitor has been using humans as sacrifices, trying to undo the seal. Duan had chased him for a long time but without success. Fun reflects on that individual, realizing that he was in the fourth transformation, and if it weren't for him showing up on his own, Fun would never have noticed him. But in the end, his level is still too low, and if things continue like this, it's only a matter of time before he's discovered. Looking at the protagonist's sinister expression, Duan begins to sweat nervously, wondering if Fun had suddenly gone silent to kill him later. Duan thanks Fun for avenging his master, and makes it clear that he is grateful for it, and that if Fun ever needs anything in the future, he should just call him. However, the protagonist remains intrigued, thinking that this guy is not weak, and on top of that, is a loner, and if he can build a good relationship with him, it might be useful in the future. Fun asks him not to tell anyone what happened during as he prefers to keep it a secret. Duan assures him not to worry, as he will keep that secret. However, he wonders about the mysterious figure's incredible darkness magic, which didn't harm innocents. In addition, he repelled the invasion of the restricted territory and saved the entire city, and a person so strong and discreet, whatever the reason, deserved his respect. Watching the protagonist, he imagines he will have to stay a little longer in the sea city of Suchin. At that moment, Fun's phone rings. He answers, and it's Professor Chi. She asks where he is. Fun replies that he's out of town, but about to return, asking if she needs anything. She says there are a few things she wants to ask him when he gets back, and that they can talk later. Fun is puzzled as to why she called so suddenly. Jing doesn't understand why the professor hung up so quickly. However, Shiwi explains that, judging by his tone, everything seemed fine, and he was already on his way back. She explains that a student who had awakened a few days ago suddenly reached the first transformation, and if it weren't for the coincidence of her investigating, he might have gone unnoticed. The professor says that the protagonist is a good person, as he studies a lot, and that she trusts he's not a bad guy, but Jing explains that she wasn't saying he's bad. However, a few things need to be clarified. She becomes serious, remembering the meeting she had, where the superiors were gathered, and one of them said that, based on preliminary information, they would continue investigating and hope to attract the attention of higher-ups. The old man, with a serious expression, asks if there's anything else to report. Ning remains silent for a few moments, but decides to ask if they think the 2 destruction spells in the city of Suchin were caused by mutants. This leaves everyone deep in thought, and the old man replies that she herself is a mutant. So why is she asking that? He explains that mutants use the power of darkness but must bear a corresponding price. The stronger the mutant, the greater the price they must pay, and they can lose their lives, sanity, or even transform into monsters, even though it's a common price. If they're careless, mutants can meet a terrible fate, and a mutant equivalent to a king would be impossible. The guy with spiked hair says she's losing her mind, because a king-level mutant only she could come up with such madness. And, mocking her, he asks if she likes telling stories. If so, she could write one. Jing makes it clear that she's just considering all possibilities. Whether he wants to listen or not is his problem. He smiles, saying that's fine, but he also makes it clear that her team is clearly a bunch of incompetents, since they can't discover anything, and that if there really were a king-level mutant, he'd cut off his own head and let her use it as a ball. The old man gives a slight cough to get everyone's attention, saying that they sent an investigation team to the city of Suchin, hoping they will actively cooperate, and, if necessary, the investigation team will assist in all tasks. He also makes it clear that the request for reinforcements from the Lone Shadow was not approved. She becomes furious, asking if they don't trust her, but he quickly responds that it's not a matter of trust, asking her to be more patient. Jing stretches, remembering the meeting she had. However, her assistant bursts through the door, saying she has urgent news. She starts explaining that the Temple of Solar Light in Long Bofu had been hit by destruction spells, and there were reports of injuries. Shi Wei, worried, says that Fun was checking the area, and the registered training location seemed to be. However, Jing interrupts her, saying that the place was precisely the Temple of Solar Light. Smiling, she says things are getting interesting in the city of Long Bafu. A shield was active over the city. many people were concerned about some events, asking if the shield was functioning properly and if they had heard what had happened at the Temple of Solar Light. A guard tells them not to worry, as the shield was at a superior level at that moment and would isolate the power of darkness from the outside, not affecting the city area. Feng grows worried, because the commotion he had caused ended up drawing too much attention, directly triggering a high alert. He hopes the alert will be deactivated so he can drive home. However, a black fissure appears above the shield, revealing a demonic face. Shortly after, several demonic monsters come out of the rift, and one of them asks if this is the human world. Looking at the shield, it wonders why they activated it. Another monster says he doesn't care, because humans are fragile and always like to hide inside their shells. With that, a horde of monsters emerges from the rift, with the horned one saying it's a shame, because the divine artifact can no longer stop them. He points his finger, ordering everyone to give them a surprise. As he says this, the monsters immediately begin to move. People are confused, as the barrier starts to break, and several monsters are passing through it. The guard, looking up, doesn't understand what's happening. Another soldier, sweating profusely, asks how the monsters managed to break the shield. Quickly, the crowd starts to panic, pushing each other. Duan swiftly prepares for battle. Surprising Fun, he tells the protagonist that this could be another high-level invasion of the kingdom. Fun, shocked upon hearing this, asks if it was similar to what happened last night in the city of Suchin. Duan asks if they should intervene. He asks the protagonist if he has a solution. Duan ponders the protagonist's question, thinking that he could easily handle the situation. So why was he asking for solutions? However, he assumes that the protagonist might be testing him. He asks Fun to stay calm, because he will take care of everything. Fun considers that there are many people around, and it would be better not to get involved. He asks Duan to handle the situation. They observe the chaos, with people running and screaming for help. The horned demon lands on the ground, letting out a malicious laugh. However, one of the soldiers shoots several arrows at the monster, shouting for it to die quickly. The monster simply deflects the arrows as if they were nothing. Soon after, another warrior jumps onto its back, but the demonic monster counters, slashing him and throwing him far away. One of the soldiers becomes desolate, wondering how that was possible, since they couldn't even scratch it. The monster starts walking, saying he's disappointed, because he thought there would be someone strong among the humans. He says this as he approaches the people, who freak out as he gets closer, begging for help. He stops in front of a poor little girl, preparing to kill her, attacking her, and saying that everyone there is truly useless. However, his attack is blocked. It was Duan, with his dagger, leaving the monster confused and giving the girl time to run away. The demon becomes furious, because someone was interfering with his killing. With a sinister look, Duan makes it clear to Fun not to worry, as he would take care of the problem. The demon begins to laugh, saying that everyone is useless. He says this, but immediately receives an attack from Duan, which throws him far away. The demon is shocked by the attack, as it managed to wound him. But soon, he is terrified, as he sees Duan leaping toward him, eyes filled with bloodlust. Duan unleashes countless blows on the demon, leaving him no time to do anything. People, upon seeing Duan in action, are amazed, saying that guy is incredibly strong, and judging by his abilities, it's likely that he's at a high level, possibly from a 5-star hidden class. Duan walked calmly as the demon exploded behind him. At that moment, Duan was at level 137, and his class was a mystical warrior, a 5-star hidden class. Fun, in his thoughts, is also amazed, thinking that Duan was incredible, and seemed to have something special about him. After Duan finished off the monster leader, the remaining creatures began returning to the rift, while the soldiers shouted for everyone to seize the moment and counterattack immediately. Duan approaches Fun, asking if there was anything else he could do. The protagonist, smiling, gives him a thumbs up, saying everything is fine and complimenting him on the excellent work. The people watching from afar comment that Duan is a formidable fighter. Noting that the protagonist was showing respect to him, they wonder if he might be the son of some great family, as he was accompanied by a bodyguard. Duan extends his hand, offering the items dropped during the battle with the boss. Fun is pleased because they are of legendary quality, and even if he can't use them himself, selling them would easily bring in tens of thousands of crystals on the market. People start shouting, asking if they needed anything, saying they could help with anything. Fong imagines that the agility skill book, false entry, would be perfect for Wang Yu, and the black shield would be good to sell later. A priest and a warrior approached the protagonist and Duan, asking if they could have a moment of their time. Someone begins to thank them for saving the city of Longbu. He introduces himself, saying his name is Mu Dongming, the mayor of Long Bufu, and finding it odd that they seem lost, asks if by any chance they aren't from around there. Fun sighs, saying that their intention was just to conduct some business, but they didn't expect to be stuck there, unable to leave temporarily, and with an intense look, he asks if the mayor has any idea why they're stuck. The mayor starts to sweat nervously under the pressure Fun is giving off, asking if it was because of the alert. He immediately bows, apologizing, blaming the department for the mistake and for causing them trouble. Fun tries to explain, asking the mayor not to worry, as it had nothing to do with them, and in fact, it was his own fault. Dongming turns and asks for someone to bring the flight scroll he had just bought, saying he would give it to them as compensation for the inconvenience. Fun is surprised by this, as the flight scroll is a great item, being hard to come by, especially in a small city like Longbafu, and even though it can only be used once, it provides quick and convenient long-distance travel. The mayor takes the opportunity to say he has a rather embarrassing request. Things haven't been very peaceful there in the last few days, and he asks if they could stay in Longbafu a little longer, since, as they've noticed, the city's defense is weak. Places a hand on his head, saying he regrets it, but he is out of time and won't be able to grant the request. However, he imagines that the class change mission has a 3-day limit. If they delay there, they won't be able to complete the first change ever again. But looking at the protagonist, he imagines the crushing look in his eyes, and says it's fine, that they'll leave it for another time. One of the mayor's bodyguards returns, saying that the scroll is ready. Dongming informs Fun that this is the supreme black card of the Yuancheng Trading Guild, just a small token of gratitude and respect. Fun, looking at the card, is amazed, thinking that he had heard the supreme black card from the Yuancheng Trading Guild is issued only to a very limited number of influential individuals who have many privileges. It's no wonder the mayor could buy the flight scroll, as his position must be quite significant. Duan accepts the gift, and Fun expresses his thanks. The mayor, feeling embarrassed, hopes they accept the gift. If not, he'd worry about being at fault. He emphasizes that if the city of Longbafu is ever in danger, they can ask for their help. The protagonist responds that yes, it's no problem, as long as he has time. Everyone is happy, celebrating, as the city of Longbofu would be safe. Immediately, they use the scroll and fly away, pleased because the scroll was truly effective. Meanwhile, in the class change room in the city of Qinyu, Wang Yu's guildmates are happy, as she and Xiao Chen were leaving. However, as Yue steps out, she notices something. She sees 2 trails pass by her. Yue is thoughtful about this, but Xiao approaches, asking what happened. Intrigued, she replies that she just saw 2 people flying, and she thinks one of them could have been Feng. He starts laughing, saying she must be mistaken. As a flight scroll costs thousands of crystals, how could someone like him afford that? Besides, what would he be doing there, since he had just awakened? Quickly, she turns around with a piercing look, warning him that if he talks badly about Fun again, he'll regret it. Jaya is shocked, wondering what's wrong with him compared to the protagonist. The rest of the group gathers, with the cleric asking them not to worry about those things. She also asks how the second change mission was going. Xiao responds that unfortunately, his was level A, as he couldn't get a level S mission. The berserker says that a level A mission is already very good, as only the lucky ones get A levels. The warrior, flattering Jiao, says that completing the second transformation at 18 already makes him a supernova, coveted by the top universities, and a level A mission is a rare opportunity. The cleric, happy, asks Wang Yui how her mission is going. However, she keeps her head down, not saying a word, leaving everyone worried about her. The berserker comments that Yue looks a bit off, asking if she had gotten a level C mission or lower. Sha M imagines that even the prodigy girl, so highly praised, has her bad days, as a low-level class change mission greatly affects attribute bonuses and skill unlocks. However, he beats his chest, asking her not to be sad, because she can overcome all of it in the future, and if she can't, he will still be there to help. He says this, but in his thoughts, he imagines that falling behind with a level C task is a big setback. She approaches Xiao with a serious expression, asking if he wasn't upset about getting a level A mission, so why should she be sad for getting a level S? Hearing that leaves everyone impressed. The cleric asks why she didn't mention it before. Yua responds that her situation is different from the others, because her mission unlocks a hidden class she had never seen before. Jaya is shocked, wondering how that could be possible, as classes are usually determined upon awakening. He's never even heard of unlocking a hidden class during a class change, thinking Yua must be mistaken. She starts remembering when she was at the class challenge field. The system notified her that class progression had detected that the player possessed the key item Vanguard emblem, which could advance the initial class, Agile Shooter, to Shadow of the Vanguard, and the class change mission would also change. In other words, the current class, Agile Shooter, advanced to the higher class, Shadow of the Vanguard, asking if she wanted to advance or cancel. Intrigued, she wonders why that screen appeared, and what it all meant. She's surprised to recall that the Vanguard emblem was a gift from Fun, as the item's effect was astonishing. Thinking back, she remembers how confident he was at that time, wondering if perhaps he knew about the power of that item. She immediately accepted the mission and thanked him for the gift. After explaining to her group what had happened during her mission selection, the cleric is outraged that she was so hasty. Jiao starts shouting, asking what Shadow of the Vanguard is, as he's never heard of it, and suggesting that perhaps the class change system was malfunctioning, and if she made the wrong choice, it could ruin her entire life. Yua just asks them not to worry about her. The berserker says he's jealous, wondering how someone can have a 5-star hidden profession and still advance. The cleric mentions that she wishes she had a childhood friend like Fun. Xiao, hearing all of this, becomes furious, thinking that he also needs to send someone to find the emblem and that, no matter the cost or danger, he must obtain it. At that moment, Fung grabs his sacred emblem, which permanently grants him an additional 5 life attribute points and 5 spirit attribute points, and it begins to shine intensely. Moving toward Fun's chest, the emblem completes its S-level mission. The system begins the class change. He starts to laugh, saying that not only did his attributes increase significantly, but new passive abilities were also added, and he wonders how far he can push his precise manipulation of forbidden spells. The system notifies him that he has acquired the passive ability Domain of Darkness. His control over the power of darkness has greatly increased, allowing him to manipulate forbidden spells with precision. Outside, Duan is still waiting for the Prota. When a person appears, it was Jing. Intrigued by Duan, wondering why he would be with Fun, as it seemed like he was guarding Fun's entrance. Looking at him, she thinks that, according to the investigation reports, he was young but already possessed the power of the fourth change, and even on a national scale, he would be considered one of the strongest. However, according to the team, when they entered, the fighter was always behind Fun, maintaining a respectful posture. Jing tells Chi-Wei that her student wasn't easy to deal with, leaving her surprised. As she sees them coming toward her, she says to the teacher that she'll leave the situation in her hands. Chi-Wei reassures her, saying she will confirm with Fun, as she believes he won't be an enemy. Fun and Duan continue walking, chatting casually, until they hear the teacher call him, making him turn. Immediately noticing teacher Chi-Wei, he asks if, by any chance, she had said she wanted to discuss something. She responds affirmatively, saying there are some things she'd like to discuss with him. Duan says he'll wait, addressing him as Sir, which embarrasses the Prota. As the teacher didn't understand this Sir, Fun tries to play it off, asking her not to mind that, saying Duan was just joking. With a serious expression, she asks Fun if, by any chance, he has already completed the first change. He is shocked by the question, remaining silent, unsure of how to respond. He thinks that although he didn't expect to hide his power for long, it was discovered very quickly. Since the teacher has always been very attentive to him, one of the few people he can trust, he thinks she won't harm him. Smiling, he replies that yes, and that explaining it would be complicated, so he preferred only a few people to know. She says there is still one rather strange issue she needs to confirm, asking if he has been affected by the power of darkness. Surprised by the question, he wants to know why she would ask that, thinking it couldn't be about the exposure of his status in the system. Chi-Wei explains that she knows the world is undergoing strange changes, and that, moreover, the invasion of the secret world into reality is intensifying. Many people have been affected by the power of darkness, and are turning into new Tentu muterates. Fun smiles, saying he understands, and asks her not to worry, as he is not a mutant. But he starts thinking that the mutants are closely monitored by the government, and he doesn't want to get involved with them in any way. She reveals an artifact, asking him to test it with her, requesting that Feng inject his energy into that crystal, as it will show the amount of power of darkness he has inside. The prota is reluctant about the request. The teacher, looking at him, begins to imagine that Fun is hesitant about the request, making her suspicious. However, he laughs, saying it's the first time he's been in a situation like that, so he's a bit nervous. He says this, and touches the crystal, injecting a bit of his energy, causing the crystal to explode into several pieces. Panicking over what had just happened, Shi-wei is outraged, questioning how the crystal could have broken. Fun asks the teacher what was happening. She starts trembling, as she recalls the conversation she had with Jing, where Jing explained that it was a black crystal, highly sensitive to the power of darkness, as it is frequently used by the government to detect mutants. When there is power of darkness, the crystal starts to vibrate, and the stronger the vibrations, the greater the amount of power of darkness. Looking at the shattered crystal in her hand, she wonders what it means for it to explode like that. Fun begins to explain that he knows it's quite incredible for someone to awaken and change class immediately, after making things strange for him, but he comments that she's known him for a long time, asking her to at least believe in his character. Intrigued, she thinks about how that child lost his parents when he was still young, and also awakened later than others, and to maintain such an optimistic and positive mindset is already something quite rare. She explains that, personally, she trusts him, but for protocol reasons, she will have to report what happened to the superiors, asking him to understand. Fun responds that he understands, but at the same time, he imagines that although she says that, he doesn't know what the authorities' reaction will be under these unexpected circumstances. He can only leave the city of Chinyu. She takes out an item that begins to shine, making the prota ask what it was. Shi-wei says it's a gift she prepared for him, congratulating him on successfully completing the first change. He accepted it gladly, thanking her for all the years she took care of him. Fun takes out an item, saying he had prepared a gift for her as well. The item is the Sacred Wings, of legendary quality, which grants an additional 20 spirit points, 50% more health recovery and healing effects, as well as 100% more resistance to darkness. She is impressed by the quality of the item, as the no need to chant effect can save lives in critical moments. She wastes, says she can't accept it, as it's too valuable, but Fun insists, saying it's just an item he got during the class change mission, asking her not to be shy and accept it. Fun hands over the item and turns to leave, saying his friend is waiting, and if she doesn't mind, he's going to go now. The teacher watches him from afar, thinking about the legendary gift she had just received from him. Shi-wei heads to the office of the adventurer's examiners to report what happened. After the teacher explains everything, Jing looks at the crystal, saying she has never seen a situation like that, asking if there's any possibility that the superiors might consider Fun a threat. Jing, tired, asks to let it go and end it there. The teacher is intrigued, asking Jing what she meant by end it there. Jing makes it clear that her student might be beyond what they understand at this point, and if he truly is a strong adventurer, they should try to recruit him as much as possible instead of investigating him and needlessly instating him. Her advisor asks if they should report it. Jing replies no, and requests to stop the investigation into Fun immediately. All related information should be kept highly confidential. Shi-wei immediately agrees, thinking that Fun is young and without much background. Protecting him this way is more than appropriate. Jing, still intrigued, responds that since Fun doesn't want to expose his secrets, they should shift their attention to Duan. Currently, they need all the talents they can recruit, and one more strong ally wouldn't hurt. Back at Fun's house, Duan, calling the prota sir, notices that he seems a bit upset. Fun, slumped on the couch, replies that the teacher just sent him a message, saying that they cancelled the investigation on him. Duan asks if that isn't good news. Looking like a living zombie, the prota responds that he's worried about how he'll train in the future, as every time he destroys a domain, it always attracts a lot of attention. He's even drawn the attention of the authorities, and if he continues, eventually he'll face a lot of trouble. Duan becomes irritated, thinking that it's not easy being a great leader, as even his problems seemed different from those of ordinary people. He had never imagined that destroying a domain would be like that, and if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't know how to react. He gets an idea and asks Fun if it wouldn't be possible to train in unregistered domains, which gets Fun a little more excited. Duan explains that recently, with the world's changes, many new domains have appeared. Some of them aren't managed by the authorities due to a lack of resources, while others are occupied by evil forces. Immediately, the prota perks up, saying that could be a great solution, and quickly asks if Duan has information on these domains. Duan replies that he currently has information on 2 of them, and can look for more if needed. Relieved, Fun thanks him, thinking that acting like an ordinary person will surely be more effective than acting like a student and looking at his supreme black card. He thinks about selling his loot at the trade market and resting a bit. After all, improving his use of curses shouldn't put him behind others. A while passes, and night falls. Dwan quickly returns to the hotel, thinking that he had spent too much time at the Prota's house and didn't have time to look for another place to sleep, so he decides to stay another night there. Upon entering, he is greeted by a man in a suit. Dwan asks who he is. They sit down, and the man in the suit introduces himself as Young Ji, the mayor of Chinyu City, thanking him right away for helping during the domain invasion last time. He then asks if Dwan is interested in living in Chinyu City permanently. Dwan responds affirmatively, saying he had been thinking about it lately. Ji is pleased to hear this, saying it's great because it would be an immense pleasure to have a strong warrior like him in the city. Handing over a special adventurer certificate issued by the city, with high privileges, he makes it clear that if Dwan ever needs anything in the future, he just has to let them know, and they will do their best to help. Dwan takes the certificate and looks at it. The mayor begins to sweat nervously, worried because he had heard that other cities had tried to recruit Dwan before, but were all rejected. Chinyu City is small, so he hopes Dwan won't disdain it. Dwan puts the certificate away, thanking him right after, saying he will indeed accept it. Quickly, Ji grabs his hand, saying that there is no need to thank him, it is he who should be doing that. Dwan thinks that, in the future, the Prota might use it, deciding to keep the certificate for now. Satisfied with this, the mayor imagines that Dwan is a for-transformation strong man with him there. The city will be safer. Trying to gain some favor with Dwan, the mayor asks if by any chance he is looking for a place to stay, as he will arrange one immediately if he is. Dwan just thanks him. At that moment, the Prota continues playing his game, achieving a victory, saying he played so much that he didn't realize it was already late, deciding to sleep. However, he notices that the class group is still chatting at this hour, deciding to take a look to see what they are talking about. Reading the conversations, he imagines that his classmates awakened when they were 16 and wanted to take the university entrance exam, but they first need to reach the 1 advancement level or higher. He never imagined that he would surpass all of them in such a short time. Right after, he notices that they are mentioning his name, saying he is just playing. He is astonished at this, as the guy is another fan of Miss Wang, wondering if he is stalking his feed on his account, because what does he have to do with this? He also notices that the teacher scolded the guy right after, telling them to mind their own lives and not worry about others. Fun bursts out laughing, saying that Teacher Chi is really cool. However, something catches his attention in the group's conversation, noticing several comments about the secret realm invasions. People were worried about it, wondering if they should be concerned. Fun becomes worried upon reading those messages. Remembering what he heard about the world changes from Teacher Chi and Dwan, he recalls the time he fought the invasion monsters, where some of them managed to escape, because if they hadn't, he would certainly have killed them. He imagines this and immediately goes to sleep. At that same moment, in the world of distortion, the boss sneezes, feeling worried because, out of nowhere, he started feeling fear. The next day, at the Chung Trading Exchange, Shin returns to work after recovering from the battle she had with the distortion monsters. Quickly, her colleague shows up, asking why she is there, since she hasn't even fully recovered from her injuries yet. Shin replies that she wasn't hurt that badly, and that she is fine at the moment. Her colleague responds that she talks big, then asks if she is eager to get back to university. She turns around, shouting that it has nothing to do with it. However, her colleague finds it a shame, because the pro turned out to be a reckless thief who dared to mess with someone from the 4th change. Shin starts shouting louder, asking her to stop talking nonsense about Feng, because he would never do such a thing. Her colleague begins to laugh, saying that Mr. Wang ordered an investigation into the Prota's background, making it clear that Fun is just an 18-year-old nobody who awakened to a 1-star job and that his parents died early. Therefore he doesn't have the means to acquire high-class items. After all, someone from the 4th change was after him, and if he's not a thief, then what else could he be? She says this, but is soon startled, as a stone spike appears in front of her, falling to the ground afterward. It was Fun, using his ability, apologizing because she was too insolent and almost made him lose control. She turns, surprised that he is there, and quickly yells for the guards because he had used magic inside the Chung Trading Exchange. Shin runs to him, urging him to leave before the guards arrive. Fun simply asks her not to worry. She explains that the influence of the Chung Trading Exchange is enormous, and ordinary person cannot afford to offend them, because if they catch him, it will be a big problem. At that moment, several people start appearing. They are the guards and Chief Wong, asking the prota how he dared to show up there. Fun becomes serious, saying he heard they were investigating him behind his back and had labeled him a thief. Wong makes it clear that whether he is a thief or not, they will find out soon enough, ordering the guards to seize him, as he had no qualification to ask anything. Quickly, the prota takes out his black card, showing it to them and asking if they treat all their clients this way at the trading exchange. Immediately, the guards freeze upon seeing the black card, leaving the young woman and Chief Wang stunned, questioning where the prota had gotten that supreme black card of the trading exchange. Quickly assuming it was fake, Fun explains that it was a gift from Mr. Dong Ming. Wang yells at the prota, asking where he got it, as it was clearly a fake card. Fun puts the card away, telling them to investigate it, since they are so good at that. The redhead, frightened, asks her boss what they should do. At that moment, he quickly grabs his phone, asking her to keep an eye on the prota while he makes a call to verify. Outside, a crowd begins to gather, asking what was happening, as the guards had blocked the way. At that moment, Mr. Wang is talking to the mayor, and Dong Ming asks him if by any chance someone was investigating the membership card he gave to the prota, and what was going on. Leaving Mr. Wang instantly scared upon hearing that. Sweating profusely, he tries to explain that it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. However, he becomes even more worried, imagining that the mayor's father is one of the founders of the trading exchange, so he cannot anger him in any way. He then wonders how Fun met Dong Ming. However, the mayor starts shouting indignantly, asking what he meant by a misunderstanding, making it clear that Fun was a very difficult conquest for him. He asks if by any chance Wang had offended him. Not knowing what to answer, Wang explains that he hadn't offended him at all, asking Dong Ming to calm down, because he would resolve everything properly. The mayor gets angry, slamming the table, suspecting that Wang had offended Fun, asking how he dared to do such a thing, and telling him to wait, as he was on his way. Immediately, Wang, after finishing the conversation with the mayor, starts crying, wondering where the hell Fun met Dong Ming, wanting to know about the relationship between the two. But soon, he has an idea, remembering Duan, thinking that he must call him immediately, informing him that they found the fighter set, because if he comes for a confrontation, even Dong Ming will have to respect him a little. Some time passes, and the prota is sitting with Shin in the waiting room. However, the mayor and Duan appeared together, running toward them, asking what they were doing there. Shin is surprised, because it seemed like the mayor and Duan knew the prota. Both, furious, turned to the woman, leaving her extremely scared, asking why they were looking at her like that. But soon, she notices Mr. Wang all dejected, as if he had been defeated, then asks what happened. However, he can only reply that it was all over. Dong Ming turns to the prota, asking if by chance he didn't want them to apologize. Fun thinks it's unnecessary, as neither of them would care to apologize, since they couldn't redeem themselves. Immediately, the mayor points his finger at the two, telling them to leave at once. Both are shocked by this. Wang quickly slaps the woman, saying that all of this happened because of her. Dong Ming, outraged at that scene, asks the guards again to remove them. After that, they head to a VIP room. Both sit down, and Shin starts serving tea. The mayor watches her, thinking that Fong has a good impression of the girl, feeling relieved, because they didn't completely ruin the trading exchange's reputation. Shin, looking at the prota, thinks that he is amazing because he was smiling and chatting normally with the important people there. Smiling, Dong Ming tells Shin that she was wronged, asking her to work hard, because in the future, the trading exchange will compensate her. Embarrassed, she thanks him, saying that she will indeed work hard. Fong apologizes to the mayor, because on his account, he came from very far away. Dong Ming asks him not to say that, as the prota's problems were his too. If it weren't for him and Shin, the city of Long Bofu could have been left without the prota to defend it. Remembering that, he had not noticed Fun looking at the rare items catalog. He then asks if he needed something. He starts laughing, saying that he was indeed looking for something, asking if he had ever heard of the final relic. Surprised by what the prota just said, he asks him what he means by final relic. This also leaves Duan intrigued about this final relic. Fong is surprised they don't know, saying it was nothing, as he saw someone mentioning it on the internet the day before, and thought it might be something interesting. Remembering that the day before, He had taken the skill book he had received from the teacher. This skill book is called Spiritual Energy Powder. It is used by mages to temporarily replenish skills during combat. Intrigued by the book, as he doesn't know what kind of forbidden spell it will become, he says this while a glow emanates from the book. But he soon decides to learn the skill from the book, with an intense glow appearing on his forehead. At that moment, the system informs him that he has learned a passive skill, Absolute Darkness Convergence. It absorbs the residual dark energy from the final relic, transforming it into his own energy. He is immediately intrigued, wondering what this final relic is. He has never heard of it, and the system did not provide further explanations, leaving him wondering what he should do. However, he feels tired and sleepy, thinking he should sleep and leave this matter for another time, since he won't use it at the moment anyway. Recalling that day, Dong Ming says that it was a rush departure that time, asking them to go to Long Bofu City, as he will cover all the expenses there. He says this, quickly grabbing his flying scroll, using it to return to the city while the two watch him fly away. Fun invites Duan to eat something, but he asks the Prota to eat at his place. At Duan's house, the Prota is surprised by the size of the house, asking if the mayor was really paying for it. Duan explains that they said that anyone above the 4th change level, who wants to stay in Shino City, would receive special treatment. He then asks the Prota if he would like to move there, as Duan can find another place. Fun sits on the sofa, saying it's unnecessary, because he will make some money, and even buy a house there, making it clear they will soon be neighbors. Duan tells Fun that if he needs money, he can lend it to him, but the Prota quickly interrupts, saying he doesn't need his money. He imagines that he recently sold equipment and accumulated plenty of crystals, which he can exchange for money to buy a mansion, so it wouldn't be a problem. But he soon thinks that he would have fewer crystals available, and if he needs them later, it will be complicated if he has already bought the house. He decides then that he will wait a bit. After chatting for a while, the tea arrives, and the Prota immediately starts drinking it, feeling relaxed, as it was excellent. Duan explains that they have a dedicated chef there, and had even called him, letting him know they would be arriving soon. The Prota is pleased with that, since it was quite convenient. At that moment, Duan's phone starts ringing. He answers, greeting the mayor of Chinu City. But Young quickly says that there is something that might be a bit of a nuisance for him, informing him that the investigation team sent from above is looking into the recent disasters that occurred in Chinyu City, and as such would like to get some information from him. Duan is surprised by this, and looking at the Prota, imagines that the investigations might affect Fun, so it's better to ask what he thinks first. He then tells the mayor that he is busy that day. Zhang replies that it's alright, asking Duan to let him know whenever he is free in the coming days. After explaining to the Prota the matter the mayor mentioned, Fun asks what this investigation group is, as he has never heard of these people. Elsewhere, a sinister warrior appears, saying that the city is strange because they are talking about a mysterious great boss. In the meeting room, several important people are gathered, asking if anyone there knows this mysterious great boss. Jing responds that she doesn't. Bang Wei, intrigued, asks if they haven't heard anything. So why would there be rumors that the mysterious great boss had saved the city? She explains that it was mainly because the secret area invasion was suddenly halted at that time, and the mutants that were invading were also eliminated. Stressed, he asks if she is joking because the danger level of the secret area invasion varies, and they can't use that as a basis before properly investigating. He makes it clear that, on the other hand, there was another accident in the secret area, with 2 attacks of king level or higher. Asking what exactly the mysterious great boss had done, Jing lowers her head, thoughtful about what he just said. She becomes worried, because to protect Fun, Jing used her power and modified all the information that could be related to Fun, and with that, all the pressure of the incident fell on her. At that moment, Mayor Young bursts through the door, informing them that he had just called Duan, but he said he couldn't attend the meeting because he was busy. Bang Wei becomes furious, saying that he hates those adventurers who are out of control. As a watchdog without a guild acts like the world belongs to them. He slams his hand on the table right afterward, asking to be put in charge of the investigation. After the meeting, he goes to the secret area. As he approaches the portal, he is stopped by 2 guards who were there. Smiling, he greets them, introducing himself and saying he is part of the investigation team and was there to enter and carry out some investigations. The guards quickly say there's no problem at all, and that with him there, they feel more at ease, asking him to enter right afterward. After passing through the portal, he notices several traces of dark energy, saying that although it's not the first time he's been there, Seeing the level of destruction, he can't help but be impressed, wondering what kind of force is needed to completely destroy a secret area. Looking at the remnants, he imagines that even the residual dark energy is so pure and powerful, because no matter what kind of nonsense this mysterious great boss is, in the face of such an existence, it's like an ant before an elephant. He immediately becomes ecstatic, shouting that this place is truly worthy of anticipation. Saying this, he raises his hand, making a sinister demon appear right in front of him, as if he were controlling it. He then lets out a malicious laugh, saying that it was indeed king level, filled with powerful energy all around, craving it all for himself. At that very moment, in Dwan's house, the Prota continues playing his game, complaining to the system. However, an alert pops up from the system, informing him that the final relic has been found, leaving the Prota surprised. He imagines that something seems to be happening, as a connection is forming with him through the aura. If he focuses carefully, the connection becomes clearer, allowing him to locate its position. Fun grabs his shirt, stands up, and puts it on. Dwan appears, asking where he is going. The Prota responds that he is going out for a while. He then rushes out, asking Dwan to finish the game for him. Fun hails a taxi, and looking at the GPS, guesses that the energy is coming from near the sinister cemetery. He realizes, through their connection, that this thing is moving. At the entrance of the sinister cemetery, the guards spot the demon emerging from the portal, notifying their superiors via radio that an unknown monster has appeared there. They both start trembling, asking what the hell that thing in front of them is, as Bangwei had fused with the monster, calling for help, because they couldn't move due to the monster alert. Blockades were set up to prevent any accidents. The guards asked everyone to stop, as there was danger ahead. At that moment, the taxi driver tells the Prota that unfortunately they can't pass the blockade. He responds that it's fine, and that he'll get off right there, paying the driver afterward. He notices that the thing had temporarily moved away. At the entrance of the sinister cemetery, the demon continued its rampage, destroying everything, while Bangwei called for help. However, Jing suddenly appears, along with Professor Chi and another person, charging toward the monster, but they quickly stopped, horrified by what was right in front of them, asking what the hell was happening. Some time passes in the sinister cemetery after the battle. Jing is in Chi Wei's arms, who is trying to heal her. She tries to say something, but can't due to her injuries. The professor imagines that thanks to the equipment Fun had given her, she managed to reduce the cooldown time and use the support spell faster. However, the situation is still critical, because not even Jing, who was strong, could stop the creature. Jing starts to stand up, trembling all over, asking where the creature was. She explains that it had headed toward the city center, but Mayor Zhang had already called for help from Kungana, though he didn't know how long it would take him to arrive and it might be too late. Jing takes a deep breath, imagining that Kungana is as strong as she is, so alone, he won't be a match for the creature. The only hope left is for the person who is pursuing it. This will be the last chance. Elsewhere, the creature is destroying everything in sight. Furious, at that moment, Fun arrives, looking at the creature and realizing that the final relic had grown much larger. The demonic creature notices the Prota standing there as if he were a beast. He wonders if he will have to use other forbidden spells to take it down first. However, while he is thinking, the creature wastes no time, jumping at him with all its might, striking toward his head. The Prota remains motionless, waiting until the last second to act. He uses his dark shield immediately afterward, blocking the creature's attack. It starts to break out in a cold sweat, wondering if this is even possible. How could he possess such incredible power? At this moment, a system message appears, informing him that the final relic has been detected and asking if the Prota wants to absorb it. Fun wastes no time accepting immediately, as he needed close physical contact to absorb it. He releases a terrible power toward the creature, absorbing it immediately, while it screams in pain. With the absorption, various memories, fragments, and places were assimilated, gaining an additional 100 total attributes. Fun is pleased, because even for a 3-star class leveling up from level 0 to the Boo, third transformation doesn't grant so many skill points to distribute so generously. However, he grows concerned, as it seemed that in addition to the absorption, he had taken in something else, since he was seeing some strange images in his head. At that moment, OW appears, asking the Prota what had happened there. Fun simply gestures toward the fallen creature, saying that it appeared out of nowhere, and he killed it immediately. Dwan, looking at Bangwei knocked out on the ground, says that it seemed like the Prota was also responsible for defeating him.
He is intrigued by the chaotic scene around them, thinking that the mayor just mentioned there was a monster invasion. He wonders if they were members of some evil sect, and although he understands that the Prota managed to eliminate the monster, he can't explain what happened to the energy around them, as it doesn't seem to be the result of a powerful spell. So, how did the Prota do it? Fun, smiling, pats Dwan on the shoulder, asking him to handle the aftermath there. As he arrived just in time, Dwan simply responds that he understands, telling him to leave it to him. After that, Fun takes off, flying at full speed, leaving Dwan astonished at the Prota's speed, wondering if he wasn't a mage, because that speed surpasses many combat classes. Shouting to Fun right afterward, he says that he truly is incredible. Some time passes after the confrontation with the creature, and in Yan'an prison, Bang Wei is incarcerated. Having confessed that he tried to control the creature, Jing explains that he discovered the creature in a secret dimension by chance, and managed to control the power of darkness for himself. Taking advantage of the investigation, he injected the power of darkness into the secret dimension, but the creature went out of control. The mayor is pleased, saying that it's great, because apparently, they have the mysterious great boss maintaining the city's security. Jing smiles, as does Professor Chi Wei, because her student is doing an excellent job. The mayor turns to Dwan and asks if by any chance he had met the great boss. He replies that he did, as he was lucky enough to encounter him once, leaving the women surprised by what he just said. Zhang asks Dwan if he could do him a favor. If the mysterious great boss is willing to settle permanently in Xinyu City, they will do their best to meet all his needs. Dwan explains that the great boss is discreet and rarely shows up, so it might be better to forget that idea. He recalls that thanks to him and the Prota, they managed to shift the situation to this mysterious great boss who doesn't exist. In other words, without evidence, they cannot investigate. The mayor laments, as it really is a pity. Strong people like the great boss are admired by many. Dwan makes it clear that the mysterious great boss has relatives in Xinyu, so he will take special care of this place, asking them not to worry. However, in return, he does not wish to be disturbed. Jing is intrigued by what Dwan just explained, but she understands everything in the end. As for Professor Chi Wei, she wonders if by chance the great boss is a relative of Feng. After all this, at the Prota's house, he is taking a bath, thinking that the so-called final relic is actually the remains left by the demon kings who died in these secret dimensions. He imagines that the additional images he saw earlier in his mind are actually memory fragments of the demon kings during their lives, which were absorbed along with the relic. He then becomes intrigued, as he has no interest in becoming a demon king, wondering what purpose these fragments would serve. However, he soon thinks of something, imagining that they could actually be useful. He reflects that under the accumulation of the power of darkness, these secret dimensions experience periods of strengthening. If the invaded time and space cannot withstand it, the world will face chaos. It is clear that in their time and space, the training path of the awakened is not complete, with only a few managing to reach the 4th level. Moreover, the professions of the awakened do not seem to have reached their most ideal form yet. He becomes worried, as the information extracted from the Demon King's memory does not seem very good. If things continue that way, humanity will have only one fate. Even if he protects himself, he will not be able to live in a world full of monsters. But fortunately, they were not the only ones to suffer from the secret dimension invasion. In other times and spaces, some managed to repel the invasion successfully. If he can collect more fragments, selecting the useful experiences, it will be very effective. After all, these experiences are beyond current knowledge, and improper handling could lead to unpredictable consequences. Suddenly, his phone rings. Fun answers, laughing, and asks Yue if she has something important for him. She invites him to dinner that evening, making it clear that he must not miss it because they were celebrating. She had managed to complete her S-class mission, and the transition to the Vanguard Shadow class was complete. Fun immediately accepts, saying that how could he refuse the invitation, especially since it was she who was inviting? This makes her happy to hear. She asks him to check his phone, because she will send him the location. After sending the location to Fun, she and Xiao leave the transformation area, where their guild friends were waiting, bursting confetti right afterward, congratulating them for successfully advancing to the 2nd level. The people around them are amazed, because at such a young age, they have already reached the 2nd level. Xiao invites Yue to dinner, saying he has reserved a private room at the best restaurant in the city. However, she replies that she already has plans for the evening, asking them to have fun without her. She then announces that she will be the host at the event the following day, requesting everyone to be there. He asks her if they shouldn't rest first, since they had worked hard during the transformation. Yua explains that it is something quite important, and cannot be postponed. She says her goodbyes, while everyone watches her leave. Xiao gets irritated, because they had barely reached the second level, and they were already having disagreements. The cleric tries to calm him down, asking him not to speak like that because Yue is that kind of person. She must have something really important to do. Annoyed, he asks everyone there if they aren't tired of running after her, leaving them surprised by his question. Zhao explains that now that she has successfully completed the transition to S-Class, she has also awakened a new hidden class, making it clear that the distance between her and everyone there will only grow. The cleric is shocked by what he just said. While everyone watches Yua walk away, Xiao comments that he fears that one day she will completely disconnect from the guild. Some time passes, and night falls at the restaurant where the protagonist and Yua had arranged to meet for a celebration. Fun is amazed upon seeing the roasted lamb, saying that the restaurant wasn't expensive and that all their food was delicious, urging her to try it immediately. Still delighted, he says that being there was only possible because he followed her. Yue quickly thanks him for giving her the emblem, as it had helped her a lot. While he devours his lamb, he becomes intrigued by what she said, and asks if the emblem had activated a new hidden class. However, he begins to imagine that in the Demon King's memories, they discovered that the awakened in their professions in that time and space hadn't reached their ideal form. He wonders next if emblems are one of the ways to achieve that state. Yue asks the protagonist if, by any chance, he knows where those emblems came from. Fun starts laughing, saying he wasn't very sure about them. She becomes frustrated upon hearing that, saying it would be great if they could buy them, as she would give one to the protagonist and the other members of her team. He feels happy, imagining that his friend is still the same as whenever something good happens. She also considers his interests. Yue asks him not to worry, saying she will handle the emblem issue, and asks the protagonist not to give up on training, as in such a dangerous time, having extra self-defense skills is always useful. She makes it clear that once she finds an appropriate emblem for him, he might also activate a new class. Fun starts teasing Yue, saying that it's hard to train alone, as having her as a friend to protect him was already enough. Quickly, she is shocked, shouting at him to stop joking around, as she was talking about a serious matter. After saying this, she suddenly feels a discomforting pain. Feng becomes concerned, and asks what had happened. She puts her hand on her arm, asking him not to worry, as she had gotten slightly injured while completing a mission. Immediately, the protagonist offers to heal her. However, she responds that she had already been healed, making it clear that it was an S-Class mission, explaining that the boss dealt a lot of damage, and she would need some time to recover. Fun is intrigued, wondering how difficult an S-Class transition is. At that moment, the protagonist's phone rings. He answers, and someone asks if he was Ning Fun by any chance, but he doesn't respond, instead asking the caller what they wanted, and who they were. He then imagines that the person had an aggressive tone in the way they spoke. However, the caller says that the protagonist doesn't need to know who he was, just asking him to answer where he had obtained the emblem quickly. He becomes fed up with that guy, and leaves him talking to himself. Yua notices her friend became stressed, and asks what happened. He responds that the caller had asked where the emblem came from. She is startled upon hearing that, explaining that she hadn't told anyone outside about the emblem. The protagonist simply picks up his delicious lamb to eat, asking her to let it go, and to eat and drink in peace. However, he notices that the guy still hadn't hung up. Picking up the phone again, he hears the guy shouting, asking how the protagonist dared to leave him talking to himself, making it clear that he would pay for what he had done. Fun listens to all that nonsense, then becomes serious. Better not to do anything to draw attention, and he hangs up the call immediately. After eating and chatting a lot, the two leave the restaurant happy. The protagonist puts his hand on his stomach, saying he was too full, and had never eaten such good lamb. She feels happy to hear that, but soon becomes concerned, asking if he wanted a ride. He smiles, saying it wasn't necessary, and bids farewell shortly after. After returning home, he opens the door, feeling drowsy from eating too much. However, he becomes startled, noticing that his house had been ransacked and was completely messy. At that moment, someone calmly approaches, asking why Mr. Fun had taken so long. The protagonist quickly becomes serious, asking if it was him who had called earlier. The blonde guy starts laughing, saying yes, and that he had told the protagonist he would pay, making it clear that if he had answered honestly from the start,
none of this would be happening.
Fun then asks who had sent him.
The blonde guy lets out a wicked laugh,
asking the protagonist how a mere lowly awakened dared to speak in such a way, then asking if he hadn't had a teacher to teach him to show proper respect to the stronger ones.
However, at that very moment,
another guy sneaks up behind the protagonist, ready to attack him, but Fun quickly dodges and counterattacks with an elbow, hitting the guy square in the nose and making him drop his dagger. Fun adjusts himself as the other guy slides down the wall.
Knocked out, the blonde guy is quickly terrified,
wondering what the hell had just happened.
The protagonist starts laughing, telling him to show some respect and calm down. However,
he begins to sweat profusely, worried, realizing that the information clearly said the protagonist was just a 1-star novice. Then he wonders how a 3-star assassin had been defeated by a mere mage, with bare hands.
While thinking about this, he grabs a shuriken, and looking closely at Fun,
notices that he has more than 100 points in all stats, and both his reaction speed and range had received significant improvements. Realizing that he could handle many situations easily,
without even using magic,
he throws his shuriken at Fun right after, but Fun dodges with ease. Immediately after seeing the protagonist's reaction, the blonde guy runs, realizing the situation wasn't good, and that it was better to retreat.
He heads toward the balcony to escape, and quickly jumps off. However,
Fun grabs his leg, preventing him from escaping,
and slamming his face hard into the wall. And after that,
the protagonist orders them to clean up the mess they made. Then,
shouting, he tells them they'll have to pay for the broken cabinet too. After cleaning everything up,
the blonde guy says they finished, informing that all their belongings,
including their clothes,
had been placed on the table.
Fun crosses his arms, saying everything is fine, but he wants to know who sent them there.
With his face all battered, he explains that it was Master Zhao Chung of the Sovereign Lion Guild. He said that the protagonist had a special emblem that was unique and couldn't be found anywhere else, which is why he had hired them to gather information about it. Fun is immediately intrigued, wondering if that Zhao Chung was the same mage from US Guild.
As if that were the case,
it wouldn't be surprising that he would do such a thing.
He then gets excited, with a sinister expression, imagining that he won't be gentle with him,
as he still had a forbidden spell he hadn't used, and he would use it especially on him.
Immediately, the protagonist activates this ability,
which involves the shadow ritual, using his mental strength to control the minds of his targets briefly, allowing him to transform into a powerful projection, targeting the two thugs there. He makes them scream in pain.
After that,
elsewhere,
Xiao Chung and the shield warrior are walking and talking. The warrior asks Zhao about the emblem, and Zhao, with a serious look, replies that he had already sent someone to find Ning Fun, and if the protagonist didn't cooperate,
he would make him experience a fate worse than death. The warrior is startled by the tone of voice his friend used,
asking what would happen if Wang Yue found out.
Xiao takes a deep breath, saying he couldn't worry about that. Sweating cold, the warrior says it was a shame the mission didn't go as planned.
However, Xiao Chung starts remembering the mission, in which originally he had let the shield warrior face the boss to diminish Yue's momentum,
scare her a little,
and then he would step in as the heroic savior.
But he had never imagined that she would risk her own life and defeat the boss.
Soon, he is startled, as someone had just appeared out of nowhere. Zhao,
upon seeing it was the guy he had sent to gather information on the Prota, gets angry and immediately asks why he had shown up there silently, and if he had managed to get the information he had requested.
However, the Prota, possessing the body of the blonde guy due to his ability,
only asks if they were the ones who caused Yua's injury.
Upon hearing that question,
the two are surprised, but Xiao approaches,
giving him a pat on the face and asking him not to interfere,
then questioning if he had some sort of problem.
At that moment,
the Prota starts using his power,
becoming furious,
grabbing their necks with all his might and lifting them off the ground. He then makes it clear that they don't deserve to live in that world for having hurt Yua, but he won't let them die so easily.
He says this, invoking black flames immediately afterward, which quickly begin to engulf them.
The Prota emphasizes what they had said earlier, something about a fate worse than death, telling them to enjoy the experience,
burning them from the inside out,
until they turn to nothing but ashes.
With that,
he starts burning the blonde guy's body too, figuring that if they all turn to ashes, there would be no evidence, making it a good way to disappear without leaving any traces.
However, he notes that this time, things are a bit dangerous,
as his home is in a common neighborhood, and he won't be able to prevent the entry and exit of high-level awakened individuals, although he doesn't need to worry about them with his power. he can't stay at home 24 hours a day. He reflects that he originally planned to access the Demon King's memories and gather some important information, but luckily he hadn't started yet, as if he were discovered by the Awakened, it would certainly cause major problems. After thinking all that through, Fun starts stretching, saying he will stay at Dwan's house first, since he is an Awakened of the 4th transformation, strong, and the security in the housing area is of a high standard, much better. After saying that, some time passes, and Fun arrives at Dwan's house, explaining to him what had happened earlier. Dwan becomes furious upon hearing everything, asking the Prota to rest, as he will investigate to see if there is anyone else conspiring against Fun, as attacking him directly was an unforgivable audacity. Fun takes a deep breath, asking Dwan to stay calm, as there was no need to rush into anything, and then asks if he knew any reliable alchemists. Dwan is surprised by the Prota's question, wanting to know what criteria he had for the alchemist. Fun explains that the alchemist needs to be high-level, trustworthy, preferably independent, and the fewer connections they have, the better. Dwan becomes thoughtful, saying he knows a few alchemists of good level, but they have already joined large guilds. The Prota replies that it wouldn't be very appropriate, remembering that in the memories he absorbed, the Demon King had already killed a few high-level alchemists, and the potions they had produced were significantly superior to the level of that world. Unfortunately, he didn't understand the specific details, only managing to copy the recipes left behind, needing to discuss them with a professional. He then imagines that alchemists who join large guilds usually have no choice, and the risk of information leaks is high, and after the lesson he learned, he doesn't want to attract greedy flies anytime soon. Fun asks Dwan if there is any opportunity to help him look, as he will also ask others. Some time passes, and Fun calls Yua, asking if she knew any alchemists. She replies, yes, just one, but a reliable one. He is immediately surprised and asks if she was really serious. Yua confirms, explaining that it was their healer's brother, Shu Wei, a good alchemist, and that he was considering joining her guild, but Zhao Ch and he didn't get along, so they couldn't negotiate. She then asks if the Prota is interested, because she can introduce them. Fun, after hearing Zhao's name again, imagines that his friend unfortunately had the bad luck of having him as a teammate, but at least he solved a big problem for her, and Xiao Cheng won't cause any more trouble. Yua, intrigued, asks the Prota why the hell he is looking for an alchemist. He explains that he had found some recipes at home and wanted someone to help him understand them. She becomes suspicious, asking if he had found something at home again. Fun starts laughing, saying he has been doing a good cleaning in his house lately. Yua asks him to wait a moment, that she will arrange everything as quickly as possible. Some time passes, and the Prota goes to the place where the alchemist is. Introducing himself, the alchemist also introduces himself, saying his name is Shu Wei, asking Fun if he could show his recipes. Outside, Yua and her friend are upset, because her friend wanted to get closer to the Prota, but her brother kicked her out. Yua, smiling awkwardly, imagines it's because she's too loud. Meanwhile, the alchemist continues examining the recipes, then says that the ingredients are not special, but the preparation method he had never seen before, seeming quite complicated. Shu Wei asks Fun if, by any chance, he knows the effect of that potion. He implies, that he heard it would increase experience by 100%. Immediately, the alchemist is surprised to hear that, explaining that common experience potions on the market can only increase experience by a maximum of 40%, and they're still quite expensive. He muses that if there really is a potion that boosts experience by 100%, 1- and 2-star awakened individuals would level up quickly. Fun smiles, saying probably yes, but he's not sure and it's not easy to ask around, so he came there to clarify his doubts. Shu Wei turns to the Prota, asking him to wait a moment, because he's going to conduct an experiment upstairs. Time passes as the three continue talking, but soon, they hear a strange noise. Everyone becomes concerned, wondering what is happening upstairs. Yua's friend starts climbing the stairs, saying she'll take a look to see what it is. After climbing, she notices something jumping in front of her, soon realizing it was the slime her brother used for experiments. Yua and Fun also go up to see what's happening, but a burst of flame shoots right in front of them, hitting the slime. Everyone is surprised by that and quickly rush to the alchemist to see what it was, soon noticing the shot came from him, as he was delighted, saying the potion had really worked, leaving the girls completely confused. Shu Wei approaches the Prota, saying he drank a little of the prepared potion and tested it on the slime, concluding that the experience indeed increases by 100%.
Fun is pleased, imagining that if that recipe worked, the others will too. At that moment, the alchemist throws his fireball again, hitting the slime hard. His sister explains that Shu loves his lab so much that he doesn't let her go upstairs, and now he's breaking everything on his own. Some time passes, and after the prota explains to the girls about the potion recipe, they become ecstatic, asking if it really increases experience by 100%. Fun nods, expressing that yes, it does. However, the alchemist asks the two to stay quiet, because this is something that requires extreme confidentiality. Shu Wei turns, asking the prota what he plans to do next, because if he sells that, he'll definitely make an unimaginable fortune. Since right now, everything is very dangerous and no one will refuse something that increases strength. Fun reflects on that, but soon hears a message arriving on his phone. He asks for a moment, because he's going to check some information first, noticing next that it was a message from Chi Wei in the class group, informing that the school's plan was to take all the third-year students to a secret location in the neighboring city to train for next Monday's event, and since space was limited, each class would have to use the location at different times and areas, asking everyone to prepare properly and cooperate actively, noting also that, after the teacher communicated this, everyone started sending worried messages, fearing that experience would be scarce, there wouldn't be space for everyone, and there wouldn't be any experience potions. Feng, after reading all those messages, becomes thoughtful, wondering what could be done in that situation, but he quickly has an idea, explaining that, regarding the experience potions, he plans to use them first on his companion, and then sell them, distribute them after some time. Yua's friend quickly asks the prota if, by any chance, he considered her one of his companions. He responds that yes, he does. She gets super excited, saying that in the future, she and Yua will be his bodyguards. However, Fun remains thoughtful, imagining that such a sought-after item, once released on the market, will certainly cause a big impact, and consequently, profit opportunities will arise. People like Xiao Cheng, who are like greedy flies, will probably appear in large numbers. To keep the peace and calm, it's better to first nurture the people around them, to support their power, because when someone has bad intentions, it will be time to act. Right after, the prota remembers Yua's guild berserker, and asks if his name was really Zhou Shu, as the experience potions could also be considered for him. The two are pleased to hear that. Yua's friend says that, in fact, last night, the berserker was worried, thinking he wouldn't be able to get into the same university, but now, he will be reassured. Fun imagines that Zhou Jiangshu is quite talented, and Yua's friend, being a cleric, is also good, so the two will be of great help. Shu Wei approaches the prota, asking if he can call him brother, and if by any chance, he has more recipes. The prota replies that yes he does, handing another one to the alchemist, who quickly starts reading it. He begins to sweat nervously, feeling disappointed with himself, because he has never heard of the ingredients listed. He recognizes only 2 ingredients from the recipe, but fears he won't be able to prepare it with his current level of power. Immediately, Feng becomes intrigued, thinking that, after all, these are recipes from a different world. If they can use some of them, it would all already be great. At that moment, Yua suggests that as soon as the first experience potions are ready, they should call the berserker and Shu Wei to train together. She pats the prota on the shoulder afterward, saying he should go too. This makes him worried, and he starts playing dumb, but Yua interrupts him, asking him to relax, as the city just sent out a notice allowing guild teams to go out for training, so he could go with them peacefully. They quickly start discussing which day to schedule the training. Shu Wei makes it clear that he'll calculate, because if they want enough potions for everyone, they'll probably be ready by next Monday. Yua says that's perfect, and will schedule it for next Monday, thanking them right after. The cleric replies that there's no need to thank them, since her brother wasn't doing anything anyway. Meanwhile, Fun looks a bit clueless, because no one had consulted him. Time passes, and Monday arrives. The prota is already at the meeting place, telling Yua over the phone that he has already arrived. She just asks him to wait by the roadside, because they will be there very soon. Meanwhile, a school bus passes by where the prota is standing. The people inside are from his class at school, and they ask if the guy standing there could be Nick. If you enjoyed this explanation, be sure to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and show your support. We'll catch you in the next chapter.